Public Access Cable Committee, and we wanted to hear their budget presentation. Hopefully, we don't mean to make you abbreviate it too much, but hopefully you won't mind that we cut you back a little bit in time. So instead of an hour, 15 minutes. But since it's also, since it funds itself, I'm not particularly concerned. But it's also going to be, and we talked about it a little bit last week, that we're now changing to a different accounting procedure or process, and that's where you're coming in with the warrant articles as well. So we'll hear from Public Access Cable. We will then open the public hearing on the town meeting warrant articles. My sense was, and I'm trying to get caught up as quickly as I can here, is to take articles by category. So what I'd like to do is all of the budget-related, the raise and appropriate articles, I'd like to get through all of them before opening it up to questions, and take them all as a group. Then, again, pull the public access cable changes as a group, pull all the marijuana as a group, all of the building reuse issues as a group, so that at the end of each of those sections, when it seems appropriate, I'll invite people up for questions. So hold your questions or take notes if you need to. We will then, after the public hearing, close the public hearing, and we will make our recommendations at that point. We do not anticipate discussing recommendations until we get to the end. We may ask questions to try to clarify positions before we get to the recommendations, but we will not be indicating any recommendations until we finish. With that said, just very, and I'll certainly invite public comment at the beginning. I'm going to ask that the public comment be short, because we'll have public comment throughout and at the end. So, but I will ask if there's anyone on the committee that has any public comment they want to make at this time. Oh, thank you. All right. This meeting is being broadcast and is being recorded by Public Access Cable for later viewing, so be on your best behavior. Actually, that is the point of having to tell you that is more about your participation than our participation. Other than, you know, please feel free to check us out on the Lunenburg Public Access YouTube channel for any of the budget discussions that we've had for the past couple of months, to get any more information that you feel you might need related to budget items for that the town departments brought forward. Thank you, Hannah. You can put that in the minutes now. That was okay. Any public comment from anybody on the committee?
Oh, sorry, I'm late.
Hannah.
Just real quick, I just want to say that we have the Lunenburg PTO Parents Night Out coming up. It's $25 a ticket, and it is trivia, and it will include some appetizers. Please eat ahead of time. It is not a dinner meal. It's from 7 o'clock to 11 p.m. and it's got a lot of great raffles. We're not doing a silent auction this year, so it's a little different. That way you have more time to spend actually participating in the trivia and not running back and forth trying to figure out who's up in your game that you want. So just wanted to let that be out there.
Okay, thank you.
That's it.
Actually, I should point out that we usually have the cookies and stuff on the front table. They're not at the front table, but that's not because we don't have any. They're over at the side table. Just fight through Phyllis and Carl, and you should have no problem. We do want to stay sustained through the evening.
Because I sat right here. That's all I want to know.
I think that you can probably steal one of the plates. There's plenty of cookies. I think we have brownies, we have the apple raisin cake, and we have blueberry cookies. And all right. Do we have any public comment from anybody in the public before we get started?
I'm Carol Ashambo, 662 Page Street, and a member of the school committee. I have been attending Finance Committee meetings regularly since last fall as part of my school committee responsibilities, and I have found this to be an excellent way to learn how the finances of the town work. I've listened to your meetings and found that you are open to ideas, intent on working collaboratively, and respectful in your dealings with each other and the public. I appreciate that. Balancing the needs of all town departments is not an easy job, I can tell. There are many more needs than there are funds. As the FY 2020 town budget is currently proposed, town departments, with the exception of the school department, have received at least level service funding. The recent adjustment to the school department budget is very helpful. It does, however, still leave $233,000 yet to cut. These cuts will impact student learning and programs. If there is any way that additional funds could be added to the school budget, it would be greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Good evening. Dr. Kate Burnham, Superintendent of the Lunenburg Public Schools. First, I want to thank the town manager for working alongside me throughout this process, checking in to see how the budget was impacted as the unknowns in December became knowns all the way through as recently as a week ago. I learned last week that the schools will be receiving additional funding from the town for the FY20 budget, up to a 3% increase over this year's current budget. As the previous speaker mentioned, that still leaves us with $233,000 in cuts to make between the budget I proposed, a 4.2% increase, and this now target of a 3% increase. We are extremely grateful for the additional funding, which will allow us to restore 1.5 teaching positions and to continue to offer French at the high school. I just want to reiterate that the needs of the district are shifting, and we must shift as educators to meet the needs of our students. The positions I identified for the school committee in December and for the finance committee 2 weeks ago were not a wish list. These are positions that are needed for our operation to be efficient and for us to meet the needs of our students and provide them with a modern day quality education. I anticipate that I will continue to learn about the needs of the district throughout the rest of this year and into the fall, and I suspect that I may identify additional needs for our students, which I will likely be presenting to the school committee in our next budget cycle. The challenge really is that the town has many needs and limited funding. We are committed to working with you and with the other departments in town to find ways to lay out long-range plans so that every department can meet their needs. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you. Actually, that does raise a thought. And, I was having a discussion with someone about years and years ago when I first sat on the FinCom. I was assigned to be the FinCom representative to the service level committee that was basically supposed to be made up of several different departments and boards to look at what level service means for each of the departments. That never happened. I think that it had existed, but it was eliminated the year I joined the Finance Committee, so that's got to go back 7 years. And maybe it's time to talk about bringing that back, because when we talk about level services, it's different from one department to another. And so I'll just throw that out there, that I think over the long term, I'm not sure that's such a bad idea. I think what happened was because of, and this is just supposing because I was not on the Finance Committee at a time when it actually existed, that it was so tied into the budget process, there were some people who felt like they had been left out of the process. So I think that's what killed it, but I think that basically it might be something to, if it is brought back, and maybe there's a way to recommend bringing something like that back, that it not be part of the budget process, but be something that happens outside of the budget process leading to it, so the report out is in plenty of time for the budget process to go. I will remind people that what will happen tonight again is we will be making recommendations. If there are things that you feel like you want to change, town meeting is a good place to make amendments. So at that point, if you hear something here tonight that makes you think that I want to recommend an amendment to the budget, then when you stand on town meeting floor, you would make the amendment to take money from one account and put it into another, just so you know. So don't expect that we're going to change anything right now. Just know that you're going to be taking this information, and we'll make our recommendations. The Board of Selectmen will be making their recommendations next week, and we'll just go from there to town meeting in another... How far away is town meeting? It feels like it should be next week.
A little bit over a month.
About a little over a month. So anyway, so let's proceed then. Mr. Walker, are you presenting?
I am.
Awesome. Nice to see you again.
My apologies for missing the other date.
I have to say that things happen, and I can understand how you misread it, since this was also the first time we ever scheduled two nights just in case.
And that's what I scheduled.
Yeah.
So had it snowed, I would have been here.
It would have been perfect.
However, it didn't. So, and I will try and be quick. As a preamble, so everyone's on the same page, PAC revenues.
I'm sorry, I just want to make sure people can hear you. You can, okay, I just want to, you're fine.
We're good?
Yep.
Okay. PAC revenues comes from Comcast fees, and they're restricted for PAC purposes. So they're not part of the general process. They go into a restricted fund, come out of a restricted fund. We are planning to change from a revenue fund to an enterprise fund. These are two different accounting methods which are allowed and are becoming required by law, and we're trying to stay on the right side of that. We've taken advice, watched what's been happening with different PACs, and that seems to be the right thing to do at the moment. And if I'm going to get to the warrants, I'm not sure if I am, but they address that issue because it's a non-trivial process to make the change through town meeting. So any monies remaining in what's called the operations fund at the moment get put back into whichever of those funds we'll be using for the future. It does not, for instance, go to the general fund. The other point is we have a capital fund, which we didn't realize we had until recently, and when the contract was finalized with Comcast, there was 85,000 capital improvement monies in there, which has gone into a capital fund. So right now, that's treated slightly separately, but I'll show you all the numbers as we go through. I'm sorry, I brought presentations.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, I don't have one for everybody. Only a certain amount of ink in my printer. So on the next slide, you will see the state of the funds as I understand them at this point in time. So it's a slide that looks like that. It's also up on the screen.
So we're not showing them back there anymore then? Okay.
I wasn't set up to do that.
That's fine. No, you're fine. You're fine.
But it's up over here anyway. Yep. So so at the end of FY18, we had $489,000 roughly in the various accounts. At the start of FY19, the operations fund had $192,600. That's what was voted in at the last town meeting. And that was both operations and capital, because that's the way we were doing it at the time. The capital fund had about $40,000 in it. We added 85 from the Comcast contract negotiations, so that had 124,000 at the start of FY19. We didn't budget anything out of that fund because we didn't know it was set up that way. We will, as you'll see, budget from it. And the revenue fund had 131,000, which was income that had come in during the previous year and a small amount that had been left in there. At that time, we were getting round about 100,000 a year revenue from Comcast. As of the 28th of February, which were the best numbers I had available, the operations fund had 146, capital fund still 124 because we didn't use it, and the revenue fund 236 because there was more money coming in each quarter. Estimated for the end of FY19, so these are the starting numbers from which we derive our funds for FY20. We are looking for the operations fund to have 95,000, the capital fund 167. There's another 42,500 coming in from Comcast this month or next month. That's in the capital fund. And then the revenue fund would have 340 in because any funds left over are reverted back into the fund, which causes confusion, for a total of 603,000. The next page is difficult to read. I did print them full size, but this is actually our budget. Okay. The 80,000, which is the right-hand column, the others are just the building columns for it. That's salaries essentially for either 2 full-time people, of which we have 1 at present, or 1 full-time and 2 part-time people. We still have to get through 1 more committee to find out how to get another position created and ensure that the salary that we're putting together is in line with town salaries and other PAC salaries. And we haven't been able to do that, but we do want that in the budget so that we can get that done. The Comcast contract doubled our revenue from round about 100 to round about 200 a year. That means we can have more people working. The intent of doing that is to be able to cover more meetings and get more out there through the PAC system. We're also on the technology front looking at improving some of the technology even before we get the new studio space so that we can do better coverage of meetings with fewer people. So that's part of our longer term strategy. As you look down the, do you want me to go through these one at a time, or in the interests of speed, because there's nothing dramatic in here, I can tell you the bottom line number.
Well, I could just ask, looking at it, or do you guys have any questions on anything there?
So far, no.
So far, no? So far, no? Okay.
One confusion, almost at the bottom, health insurance, 15,000, is for 2 full-time people. If we go with 1 full-time person and 2 part-time people, that number would be halved.
Okay, and then basically what you're doing is you're setting the budget up as, at this point, anticipating that you'll have these changes, but you don't know that you will.
Right.
Okay.
So the PAC salaries, 80,000, operations, 72,000, capital, 120. That would be coming out of that capital fund that I was talking about, not out of the original fund, for a total of 272. Which, as you may have noticed, is more than our revenue for the year, which is around about 200, but 120 of it is coming out of the capital fund, not from revenues, which means our operations and salaries come to about 150,000, and we are expecting round about 200,000 as revenue for the year. Is everybody okay with that?
Yeah, the only question I would have on that is, I know that you usually have a capital budget at the beginning of every year and you don't always spend it because you still anticipate having a final home somewhere. Is that still a consideration?
That what we're going to need to try to do, well, first off, we put money in there for catastrophic failure.
Right.
Because if we had a major failure, which we did 2 years ago, we'd have had to wait for town meeting to get enough money to repair the heart of the system in the room back there. So we tried to keep money in there for that and hope we don't need to use it. Yeah. Secondly, we don't have a date for the new studio. So what we're going to start doing as best we can is enhancing the equipment we've got. But we have to be careful. It's got to be done in a way that's independent of the room it's in. So it can't be mounted or hung from poles in the ceiling or anything like that.
Okay, thank you.
Does anyone else have anything on the numbers? So the summary budget, which is the next one after the operations notes, was gives you the totals. So income expected to be 208,000. We're presuming this will be handled through an enterprise fund, which means it's available for appropriation. Budget expenses, that's operations and salaries, 152, and the capital is 120 out of 167.
Okay.
I have the warrants. Do you not want them at this time? Because I would appreciate.
Not at this time. I'll ask you to do the presentation when we get to them through the
Okay,
warrants.
because I would appreciate your input on them as the Finance Committee.
Oh, you'll get it. You'll get
You
it.
mean even if I don't appreciate it? I
Even
will
if you
get
don't
it?
appreciate it,
Thank you.
you will get it. Yes.
Appreciate your time.
All right, actually, don't go too far, because I just will ask if, we'll follow this presentation the way we do all presentations, so if anybody has any questions regarding the budget, you put your hand up, so I'm going to assume you do. So,
Hi, Rhonda Lucio, 181 Reservoir Road. I'm just curious, I'm aware that the FCC is considering the request from the cable companies to no longer have to fund public access.
But I can tell you what I know about that, because the FCC is trying to change some things, one of which is actually what they would like to do is to be able to say the cost of the channels that we use can be accounted against the 5% fee that we are presently getting. Right now, I'm not going to predict the winner of the Super Bowl the same way as I'm not going to predict what's going to happen with that, because nobody has a clue. There's a lot of politics going around it, and right now I don't have a way of building that into this except for one thing. Right now we have plenty of money.
Okay, it was just my understanding from the articles I read that they were, the cable companies wanted to completely eliminate all of the franchise fees.
That I haven't seen. I would be surprised if it got through, but I have not seen that. I've just seen they're looking for a reduction.
Okay, thank you. And I just wanted to bring up to the committee that this, if something does happen to the funding, I know the newest member had asked about things that could possibly be taken away funding.
Yes.
So this would be one of those things. I just wanted to point that out.
no, absolutely. No,
Thank
that's a
you.
good point. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Luck.
Just one quick one. Carl Luck, 50 Sunset Lane. I may have misunderstood. I couldn't read the charts. I thought I heard that they were planning on for the health for 2 employees of $15,000. Was that $15,000 total?
That was-
Normally we allocate $25,000 for a new employee for health insurance.
I believe that's what they put in total.
15.
In anticipation of a new position.
And it's, well, basically, I don't know if you, well, one new position, one current position, and I think the one current position, I believe, is, it depends on whether you're doing single or family or things like that, so, yeah.
Yeah, the current one, that number, and hopefully that person stays. I know them all, I hope they stay.
Right.
But usually when we put a new head that we don't know what they're going to take for insurance, we usually, and the town manager can correct me, we usually put $25,000, because that's an option that a new employee could select. Is an
Absolutely.
option that costs $25,000, so it may be
Okay.
a little weak there.
Okay, thank you. Did you want to speak to that? No? Did you want to speak to that? I didn't know if you did or not, you stood up.
You did not. It's-
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. All right. Then with that done, we're going to continue now through the, we're going to open the public hearing on the warrant with the first set of articles that are all related to the budget. There were copies of the warrant around. I don't know if everybody got a copy. So I'm going to anticipate that we're going to hear from the town manager on Articles 1 through 20? No, 1 through 15. I'm going to hear a lot from you.
All right.
All right, so basically, I'm going through the Article 14 is the solid waste disposal. Article 15 is going to be the water department. Article 16, 17, 18, and 19 will all take pegs. So I'm going to assume that that's going to be, we'll hear from public access at that point.
So you want to go through that instead of what I normally do for a public, the presentation?
I just realized I can't multitask anymore. I'm getting too old. Okay. I'm sorry. Can you ask your question again, Heather?
Do you want me to do my presentation on the budget first? Or
Yes,
is it
I do.
Okay.
And then, because that's gonna address the first 14 items. Mr. Toll.
Madam Chair, if I may, the selectmen posted tonight in case we had a quorum. At the present time, we don't, so I'm not going to call the meeting to order unless we get one.
Okay, thank you very much.
Town manager, do you want to put this underneath the projector to kind of like up it a bit
is it?
for the screen or no?
Yeah.
I can't.
Hold on 1 second.
I think we're the only ones looking at the screen.
I know.
Yeah, Karen, there's a like right there.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you'd have to put a chart up first so we can see where it goes to. I don't know how much of that
This
is.
is dead, so I don't mind using it as a prop.
Yeah. Needs to be shifted. Should be coming up on that screen too, essentially. So, what's that?
You guys need it to go up a
Can you see
little
it?
bit, or are you fine?
Yeah, can you put
You're
that?
fine.
You're fine?
As long as the bottom will
Say
be.
that's kind of cut off the bottom.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
All right. So I feel like you've heard this probably a few times now. It's going to be some of the same information again from the February public hearing or presentation. So the FY20 recommendation funding covers all contractual, union, and non-union salary increases. It reflects level services with some exceptions. It's a balanced budget proposal based on use of recurring revenues for operating costs, meaning no requests for drawn free cash or stabilization towards operating. It meets or exceeds the town's financial policies, including depositing $100,000 into the regular stabilization account from free cash, depositing $200,000 of free cash into the special purpose stabilization fund to pay for future large capital needs, and funds the capital plan. And it deposits 10% of the previous year's certified free cash, which is $150,000, into the town's other post-employment benefits account. So this chart shows a breakdown of revenue sources by percentage. Property taxes are our largest single revenue source at approximately 65% of our total revenues. State aid is our second largest revenue source at 21%, and local receipts is 7%, and available funds makes up the other 7% of total revenues available. When we look at revenues from property taxes, we take into account the prior year tax base at a maximum of 2.5% increase per Proposition 2.5, add in an estimate for property tax new growth, include the debt exclusions for the school and pavement management project to obtain the maximum allowable levy for fiscal 20. And you'll see the numbers there. So the maximum allowable levy is $27,953,184.38. Here's a slide with a 5-year history of our new growth. The estimated new growth for fiscal 20 for the preliminary budget, or the budget presented to you tonight, is $375,000. We are maintaining our original estimate of new growth at $375,000. For state aid, the budget recommendation includes the governor's state aid proposal. The governor's budget proposal was released on January 24th, and it included an additional $201,046 in Chapter 70 funds, which was a 4.3% increase, additional $29,522 in unrestricted general government aid, which is a 2.7% increase, for a total estimate of $9,250,358. So an increase of 2.7%, which was due to offsets on the cherry sheet for veterans benefits, state-owned land, and smart growth school reimbursement. We also, in our cherry sheet, have 40S money. We're one of 2 communities to receive this, and the governor's proposal is $17,686, and that's included in the school appropriation. This is a history of state aid. So you can see over a 10-year period, the increases and amounts. As historically looking at state aid, the Chapter 70 money has progressed at a faster rate than the unrestricted government aid over a period of time, if you look at changes in percentages. Local receipts is another category of revenue, and the estimate being used for local receipts for fiscal 20 is an increase of 2.36%, or $69,336 over the previous year's estimates. And this includes motor vehicle excise tax, licenses, permits, fees, fines, investment income, and this is an elastic revenue because it's very dependent on the economy. By keeping our local receipt revenues conservative, we ended up with positive free cash when it's certified in the fall, and this allows us to continue to fund our capital needs and put away reserves into the stabilization, special purpose stabilization, and OPEB trust fund. Revenue estimates for available funds includes the level funded MSBA reimbursement amount of $535,316.89 for an old school building project, the indirect cost for town services and debt payments attributed to the sewer enterprise and water enterprise, the use of $43,500 from the artificial turf revolving fund to pay associated costs for the artificial turf fund debt for fiscal 20, the use of $6,350 from bond premiums reserved for capital, the use of $171,781.68 from prior year's unexpended articles for capital, and the use of $1,182,731.96 from free cash to offset the fiscal 20 capital plan, the OPEB trust fund account, the regular stabilization account, and deposits money into the special purpose stabilization fund. Outside of the cost of providing services for the town, other expenditures include the assessment for retirement of town and school employees, cherry sheet offset charges, which include tuition assessments for school choice and charter schools, and state and county charges. Also on the expenditure side is the sewer enterprise, solid waste enterprise, and cable access, which is transitioning this year to the enterprise fund. The capital requests and other warrant articles that may have a financial impact also have to be included on the expenditure side, but are to be proposed to be offset by free cash. So in December, departments were sent budget documents that were asked to meet target budgets that included contractual increases in level funded expense categories. This slide highlights what the target budgets included at that time. So for general government, it was $60,000 for an assistant town manager, HR director, $8,000 for updates to the general code, $80,000 for an additional patrol officer, $58,000 for a career firefighter, $25,000 assessment increase for regional dispatch, $50,000 for increase for pavement management, like we do every year, increase that account by $50,000, $40,000 for facilities, $45,000 for a full-time rec director, $65,000 due to the recycling market changes where we have to adjust our contract price, 2.5% increase for the Lunenburg Public Schools, which is a $504,000 increase, a 2.5% increase for Monty Tech, which was a $20,000 increase, and health insurance, which at that time we projected at 8%, which was a significant difference from what we're seeing today. So the FY20 above target highlights that were requested when budgets were returned were general government, additional $8,000 for election, census, and registration workers' salaries. The police, reduction of $5,000 from the target budget figure. The fire department, an additional $92,000 more than the target to hire, that included hiring a career firefighter, associated costs, training for paramedics, and only funded overtime at 44%. Radio Watch at $38,000 for weekend coverage for a desk officer at the Public Safety Building. DPW, $60,000 for stormwater-related costs. Board of Health, $5,000 for additional hours for the Board of Health clerk. And the Lunenburg Public Schools was $629,000 over the target budget, which at that time was a 5.9% increase from the previous year. The preliminary budget that was presented on February 14th included funding the target and above target requests for an assistant town manager, HR director, election, census, registration workers' salaries, and software costs. The library included 2 additional hours a week for a staff librarian. The police department included an additional full-time patrol officer. The fire department, it funded the target budget and $16,000 of above target for the continuation of paramedic training for the 2 new firefighters that were hired this year and more adequately address the overtime costs. The regional dispatch, the assessment, so regional dispatch was $3,000 for the desk officer on holidays. The DPW, $50,000 for the pavement management plan, $40,000 for facilities, $20,000, which was a reduction from the target for the recreation director, and an additional $60,000 for stormwater costs, which became known at that after budget submission. The recycling included $62,000 for the new contract with Casella. Health insurance, it reduced. We, at that time, mid-February, we were told the maximum rate increase was going to be a 5% for health insurance. So that was equated to $116,183 increase. Money Tech, we still did not have the assessment at that time, so that was still estimated at a 2.5% increase. And the Lunenburg Public Schools, the estimate remained at 2.5%, but due to the changes in health insurance, the level service, what was called level service, was a 3.04% increase, which is $109,000 more than the target budget. And the superintendent's recommended budget decreased from a 5.9 to a 5.5% increase, or $600,000 more than the target budget. Updates to the fiscal 20 preliminary budget since February 14th. General government, we became aware of increase in the assessor software for the conversion, that for software that they're using now is going to be no longer supported. The regional dispatch, the assessment came in $3,000 higher than the preliminary estimate. Health insurance, or actual renewal, decreased by 2.45%, which was a savings of $64,000 on the town side. Money Tech, the assessment decreased by 4.8%, which is a decrease of $60,000. The Lunenburg Public Schools, due to the change in health insurance, the target budget was increased to, which equated to a 3% increase over last year, so $605,752 more than fiscal 19. The maturing debt and interest, there's a short-term borrowing payment due that's now calculated in, but it's both on the expense and revenue side because it's a debt exclusion. And the snow and ice deficit, the current snow and ice deficit is approximately $63,000, and we plan on taking care of this within the fiscal 19 budget adjustment article. So this slide shows a detail of the total debt service for fiscal 20, and the debt service for fiscal 20 will be $4,676,000. $76,483, which includes general fund debt, sewer-related debt, water-related debt, the MSBA school project debt, and exempt debt.
I'm sorry, I'm just going to stop you there. Just one
Go
question,
back.
because there are two sources of water. The water betterment is related to the water district or the Lunenburg water?
We have a small piece of town that attributes to the water enterprise account.
Okay, so, all right, so it's not the water district, this is the town. Okay, thank you.
Right. So insurance, the liability, police, fire, injured on duty, and workers' compensation insurances are all level funded based on actual expenditures for fiscal 18 and 19, and our fiscal 20 renewal agreement at a 0% rate increase. For health insurance, the estimate is a 2.5% decrease for active employees and a 5% increase for retiree insurance. That's retiree insurance runs on a calendar year, not fiscal year. 38% of health insurance is active town employees, 62% is retiree health insurance for both town and school. And of that retiree insurance, 30% is town and 70% is school retiree insurance. Retirees renewal, like I said, is on a calendar year base. And a new public employee committee agreement went into effect in fiscal 19, which included plan design changes that reduced our current and retiree health insurance costs. Some personnel highlights on the town side. The HR director, assistant town manager position is being recommended by myself that adds a regular part-time HR director, assistant town manager for approximately 20 hours a week. And this recommendation is based on a priority need to create greater efficiencies. The library, additional 2 hours a week for one of the staff librarians. Police department, an additional police officer that follows along with the 10-year long-term plan. Fire department, it increases overtime costs to more adequately address shift coverages, which is still on target for our 4-year plan since 2 firefighters were hired in fiscal 19. The parks adds a parks director for less than 20 hours a week for no more than 1,040 hours a year, so that non-benefit eligible employee. And this was recommended based on the absence of any paid staff to perform administrative functions and programming needs of the Parks Commission at the mid-management level. So I know there has been a lot of questions about the HR assistant town manager position, so I hope to address some of these through this slide. So the typical education and experience for this position is a bachelor's in public administration, human resource administration, business administration, or a related field, with usually 5 to 7 years of related experience, preferably municipal. As part of the HR function, duties would include working with department heads on hiring, disciplining, and termination of employees, research and create competitive compensation system to retain qualified individuals, research, prepare, and recommend personnel policies and practices, assist in interviewing and selection of candidates, provide guidance to all department heads regarding personnel policies and procedures, grievance procedure administration, investigate, mediate, and resolve personnel problems, employee recruitment, develop procedures and oversee orientation for new employees, and maintain and recommend revisions to the employee handbook. As part of the assistant town manager role, duties would include assist with procurement and putting bid packages together and other special projects as assigned. This slide shows the fiscal 20 capital plan that I know we'll go into a little more detail throughout the meeting. And it includes, I'll go down the list for everyone at home. For the fire department, vital sign airway monitors, 2 police vehicles, a replacement of the engine 4, Wi-Fi upgrade at the primary and Turkey Hill Elementary School, new voting machines for the town clerk, asbestos abatement, one of the phases of the projects at Turkey Hill Elementary School, the fuel tanks, the DPW for replacement of those tanks, new patrol rifles and shotguns, funding for implementation of master plan for the planning board, replacement of Rescue 2 for the fire department, painting the exterior of the teen center, resurfacing the basketball court and replacing the fence at Wallace Park, and a building automation system at the public safety building. And the total of the capital plan is $1,684,100. So to conclude this, the budget, I should say fiscal 20, fully funds all contractual union and non-union salary increases, is a balanced budget based on use of recurring revenues for operating costs. And there's no draw on stabilization or free cash for operating expenses, and maintains level services with some exceptions, and includes planning for future capital and liability costs. And just next steps, town meeting is May 4th. The Senate budget is released around Memorial Day. It goes to conference on June 30th, and the approved budget gets done usually more towards the end of July. And any final adjustments needed as a result of the state budget can be made at the fall town meeting. Any questions?
You'd like to take questions at this time? Okay.
Unless you...
Any questions on the budget presentation?
Good presentation.
Okay. Any questions? Okay. We'll go ahead and take questions at this point. Go ahead. And then we'll...
I'm just going, Ron DeLisio, 181 Reservoir Road. I'm going from memory, but I thought I saw on the slide that the position for the recreation director, it said full-time.
The target budget included a full-time.
Oh, okay.
But then it was reduced.
Okay,
Yep,
gotcha.
part-time.
Thank you.
Mr. Luck?
Carl Luck, 50 Sunset Lane. Just one question. I think on the revenue things, there was a 171,000 from unexpended capital. Is that the right number? Now, since capital that came from a non-recurring source, how does that get treated to make sure that that funding doesn't get used in a recurring manner?
Well, it's being used to partially fund the fiscal 20 capital plan. So it's capital going towards capital. You're welcome.
Sure.
My name is Sarah Kammer. I live at 304 Lancaster Ave. You listed that the target budgets were reached and things were at level services in most cases. Can you list all the things that are not level service?
So that's a hard question to answer.
It is a hard question to answer. I want to say that basically as the budgets were presented for the departments on the town side, which is what the town manager would have presented, level service was identified as what was initially put forward. And again, this is why one of the things I said was it would be really good if we got back to having a level service committee so we know what that means. So for example, for the schools, a level service budget changes based on, okay, we now have 60 new kindergartners, so level service for kindergarten is going to be this, but is there a loss in students someplace else? Do we not need the maintenance costs that we have? You know, like what does level service mean? So that's what makes it hard. So in terms of what the requests are, it was based on, it's probably not fair to say level service as much as it was based on, given what you have now, this is the increase, because the level service piece is harder to address. And again, that's I can't speak to because I didn't really participate in the school department presentation, that's the one that's tougher, even for us, because we deal more prominently with the town departments throughout the year. So that's the one that's, to me, is a harder read, just because the student population changes so drastically from year to year. And it had been trending down, and now all of a sudden it's trending up, and how long is that trend going to go? The students were trending back into district. Now, like then are they going to start trending out again? That's a factor. For the police, when they come, the chief of police will present, this is how many service calls we had, this is how many reports we had, this is how many arrests we had. What's level service for police? Level service might need to be, it would be great if no police officer had to handle more than this many arrests. This would be when we know that we need one police officer. We had 16 responses that would have required paramedic services. Is that when did we trigger paramedic services? We don't know. So, again, for the finance committee perspective, what we're looking at is, this is what you say you need, this is what we say we can, balancing everything out, this is what we say we can fund, and then we leave it to the town to say, yeah, no, we don't think we need that much, but our recommendation is our recommendation. But I understand where your question's coming from, and I wish I had a good answer, but I would say that there's no particular department that I can think of that truly believes they have a level service budget. What they believe is that it might be level service, but the services are really not what the services are what they should be, but it means that people are working harder than maybe we need. We're asking them to do more with less all over town. I mean, like basically that's my read after all of the years of listening to folks, and it becomes really hard to measure. So again, I would go back to, since the Board of Selectmen is sitting over there, to say, yeah, it would be really good if you guys wanted to get together that service level group again and really start to do some better long-range planning. That's just my sense. I'm sorry, I really went off on you. I didn't mean to. I'm sure that doesn't answer your question at all. Okay. All right, so if there's no other questions on the budget in particular, then why don't we start moving through the articles? And again, just to reiterate, our plan is to go through, we're going to try to bunch articles together. We'll certainly welcome people to ask questions once we get through a series of articles. So for example, any of the budget-related ones or the finance-related ones that we have to get through, at the end of those articles, we'll invite people for questions. We don't anticipate going through each marijuana article. We'll take them as a bunch and then address any questions and so on. So,
all right. So put them into a PowerPoint so you can look on the screen, and hopefully it will show up over there as well. So they're probably really hard to read for you from there. So you have copies on your table there. So the first article, and these, I want to precursor, they should remain generally the same, the order and everything, but the selectmen still are meeting on Tuesday to finalize the warrant. So that's why when we discuss, we'll discuss it as content, preferably than article numbers, if you want to. First article is every year to hear and accept regular written reports of town officers and committees. So that's a standard article that is always on the town meeting warrant. Article 2 is to replace the revolving fund chart. Last year we created a bylaw as required by the new Municipal Modernization Act that isn't very modern. So this replaces that chart. Article 3, so this is the second part, we're still required to vote every year about the spending limits of those revolving funds. I do know that the governor is doing a round 2 of the Municipal Modernization Act, and they're talking about doing away with this requirement. So making it part of your bylaw, and the only way you have to amend it is if you amend those spending limits. So if they maintain the same level, you would just amend the bylaw. Article 4 is the for payment of prior year expenses. Right now, we know of one prior year expense for $500.
That's it?
Yep.
Okay.
Article 5, as labeled as 5, is for adjustments to the fiscal 19 budget. So this is where we will adjust for the snow and ice deficit and take funds interdepartmentally for within the fiscal 19 budget for that deficit. Article 6 is for the fiscal 20 capital plan. Do you want to start, what's your procedure for tonight? Are you going through them all and then going back and making recommendations?
Oh, yeah, we'll get through all the warrant articles, and then we'll close the public hearing, and then we'll make our recommendations.
Okay. At what point did you want to go through them? Because the capital plan, I know there's a presentation related to that one.
Oh, there is?
For the fuel tanks.
Okay, then...
you want to do it right now?
Yeah, let's do it right now.
Okay.
Terry, do the board
I'm sorry?
do the Board of Selectmen want to call to order now?
I'm sorry, I'm just going to ask, since we saw a third select person come in. You have called your, okay. Thank you.
Terry, let me preface this whole display by offering you a banana bread that you asked for last week.
You should put it on the table over with the other stuff.
Is that a bribe? What's she offering? What's she offering?
That would, Chief Marino has added to our snack pile over there.
His famous banana.
When Chief Marino has his coffee with the chief, he sometimes serves banana bread. I haven't had an opportunity to have it yet. We are so happy to have something available.
There's a select person who just accused me of bribery over there. I just want to clear the air.
Is the value more than $5?
Huh?
Yeah.
Hopefully the ingredients cost less than that, so.
It was less than $50. What's that? All right. So, let me first explain why we're here. You had mentioned, I believe it was 3 weeks ago, that maybe we should do a cost analysis on this fuel tank issue. And of course, the fire chief and I believe the DPW director expressed our concerns about just removing the tanks and doing away with them. In a meeting subsequent to that meeting with myself and my administrative assistant, public safety coordinator, the DPW director, the fire chief, the town manager, we met to speak about some other things, including vehicle maintenance, but this subject came up, and it was at that point where Amanda and I decided that we'd do some research and try to develop some kind of cost comparison between the proposed WEX program and the purchase of fuel as you know it today, as done through the state contract. So that's how this thing got started. It's not, I want to make it clear that this wasn't a task force. However, there were a couple of citizens, 3 that I can think of right off the top of my head, 2, one who's here, Carl Locke, Dave Rogers and Dave Passio were all very interested in the subject, and I wanted to make sure that I get as much information to them as possible. And Carl has been working close with us with respect to this cost comparison and analysis. We met with Dave Rogers. I've spoken to Dave Passio a couple times informally, just to show them what we came up with. The purpose of that, obviously, is to be more just to be more transparent, to make sure that they don't think, because I have an agenda. I have an agenda here, quite frankly, and I'll speak about that in a minute. But I want to make sure that they knew that this was an impartial study, mostly done by Amanda and Samantha from the DPW, the administrative assistant at the DPW. at my direction, but with an order to do it very impartially, to show whatever the figures were, no matter how they came out, we wanted to know, good or bad. And that's what they did. So the other things we learned, and thanks to Carl, he was very instrumental in helping me become aware of some things that I really never thought about, and it's, you know, caused me to take a more in-depth look at my emergency action plans as it relates to the subject of fuel supplies. You know, we have basic hazard, we have all hazard plans. Those are basic, we all have those with specific appendices and so forth and standard operating procedures, but we spend a lot of time on hazard plans without drawing a link to energy reserves. And an example of that is, you know, coordinating with local fuel suppliers or petroleum suppliers and major oil companies, you know, to facilitate the delivery of adequate amounts of fuel and you know, to ensure that essential public service, you know, can be sustained by public safety. But whatever the actions taken tonight or in the future, my concern will be that public safety will need to access and control of fuel supplies to support an immediate response operation to guarantee the normalization of community living conditions. That's our goal, bottom line, no matter what you decide to do tonight. So with that, I'm going to defer this this presentation to my public safety coordinator, Amanda, and I believe Sam is going to work with her to try to explain to you what we learned or what they learned with respect to the financial side of this this study.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hello, Amanda Moore. I'm the Public Safety Coordinator at the police station. This is Samantha Lennox, Administrative Assistant for the DPW. Awesome. So we were tasked with comparing the two state contract programs. The current one that we are on, which is the ENE 4041 contracts, that is buying fuel in bulk for tanks that we have. Right now our tanks are underground. They're looking at, you know, on the Capitol to put 2 above ground tanks in. So we were comparing that cost versus the VEH 100 program, which is the fuel card program. It's also called WEX. The program that's authorized through the state contract is called a WEX card. So what we did, we called out around to a few different departments. Fitchburg actually uses exclusively the WEX cards. They don't have a local source of fuel. So we called their police station as well as their DPW. We received copies of their invoices for a month snapshot looking at their invoices. The invoices are really lengthy, they're like 70 pages long. It's really detailed. So we did keep it at 1 month when we did the analysis. We look at, if you look at the second 2 pages of the packet that I gave you, the first one should be gasoline and the second one is diesel. What we did, we looked at a variety of their different purchases on their different days, and then we compared them to what we would have spent on the current ENE contract that we have right now on any given day. Anything that's yellow, they received an additional discount for purchasing fuel at a Gulf station. On the WEX card contract, there's an additional 2 cents off per gallon if you purchase at Gulf. Once we did all this in comparison, we came out to an average cost per gallon that they spent more than we would have spent on our contract. For gasoline, the average was 36 cents per gallon, and diesel, it was 25 cents per gallon. We then looked at our total consumption as a town for fiscal 18. So if you go back to our top sheet, the top part is gasoline, the bottom part is diesel. The town as a total purchased, or actually consumed, almost 30,000 gallons of gas. If you apply our discount, just to back up a little bit, we removed the taxes. The way that the billing is done on our current contract that we're on, the taxes are billed individually. So trying to be as close as we could to the two, we took all the taxes out. We would be paying the same taxes. We're exempted from certain taxes, and you'd still have to pay federal fuel spill taxes. There's a few things that we still have to pay on both contracts. So we did remove them, understanding that we still would pay taxes for both contracts. When we applied the discount, we assumed that we would pay, Fitchburg would have paid, or we would have paid, using that number, $10,800 more for gasoline, and $3,300, those are approximates, you have the exact figures on your spreadsheet, more for diesel, bringing it to a $14,000 more that we would have spent had we been on the WEX program. We then talked, and we came up speaking with Carl, a few other people that we had, when we were trying to get as close as we could to what we really would be saving or what other expenses that we would incur having our in-house program. There is an annual maintenance fee and insurance that we pay for having fuel tanks. We don't have exact figures because we were basing our numbers based on a few calls that we've made, trying to get some information, what we currently pay for the underground tanks and what we would be paying for the above ground tanks. Those numbers are actually a little bit less for above ground tanks. So we used round numbers, $4,000 for annual maintenance. Those are annual inspections and things like that that need to be done on the tanks, and approximately $2,000 for insurance. There is an additional rebate that is available through the WEX program. We applied that to the total, and after all those things are figured in, we're looking at about a $7,000 cost savings per year. That was a lot of information. I don't know if that was at all, if you were able to follow that.
No, you presented it very well. John?
On the annual maintenance,
Yep.
First of all, very good, very thorough. This is very clear. I really appreciate it. A couple questions. Number one, on the annual maintenance, does that include any checkup for the fire suppression system, that is the infrastructure, the superstructure?
Currently, no.
Currently, no. Any idea how much that would be, or is that just a wild guess?
No.
It's not required.
It's not required? No kidding?
It's not required unless you sell gas to civilian customers. So it's required for gas stations, retail gas stations that sell to the public.
All right, okay. And the $4,000 annual maintenance and the $2,000 insurance are round numbers, they're approximations, right?
Yep, estimates.
Okay. I'm sorry I didn't catch it. Is the maintenance and insurance more or less than for an underground tank?
It's more for an underground tank, less for an above ground.
Less for an above ground.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, okay. Thanks.
One thing I didn't hear touch on was the grant.
Okay. Let me just follow up with a conclusion here, just so you know a little bit more about what we did. So part of this study led me to investigate other sources of fuel. One of the ideas was the local contractors use tanker trucks to fuel up their equipment in the field.
Yeah.
So they maintain fuel on site at their yards, and so I checked with one local contractor who has a tanker that holds 4,000 gallons. He says that at any given time he might have 2,000 gallons on hand. I asked him, would you be willing to sign an agreement that if there was a catastrophe that we could access the fuel, which was only diesel. They don't do this, they don't have gas tanker trucks, they're only diesel trucks. So, the police department uses gasoline. He was very willing to do that. So that's good. That's a backup system. I've been, now this has been going on now for a week or so, I've been waiting for some return calls, one from another contractor who has a tanker, to see if they'd be willing to do the same thing. So we're trying to cover that backup piece, backup fuel piece. But again, that's only diesel, which is good for the fire and DPW. Another thing I found was that in Chapter 148 of the Mass General Laws, the state is required to provide grant monies to cities and towns for the removal of tanks and the replacement of fuel tanks. 50%, they'll pay 50% after the fact. And we fit that criteria perfectly because it doesn't require that the tank's leaking. As a matter of fact, if it's an emergency and your tank's leaking, they will not fund it. So I've been on the phone with the local representative. They're investigating whether or not that grant has been funded. So that could be something in the future that might fund 50% of the entire project. And likely could, if you and I don't have I do have a copy. I can provide you with a copy of that statute that enacted a committee and that enacted the law that would enable us to apply for those funds. I've spoken to numerous police department, police chiefs, just to see what their access was to fuel, and it was probably 50-50. Some access to fuel just as we do at the DPW. Others used local vendors, like fueling stations, civilian fueling stations to access fuel with either credit cards, in some cases the WEX card, in other cases they just had accounts with them. But particularly today, I talked to a chief today who, as a matter of fact, they're in the process of they have above ground tanks and they want to replace their gas pumps. So their concern was, his immediate concern, as I learned, was that he's going to be without his pumps for 2 days. So he was going to be without his pumps for 2 days. So he was looking for an alternative supplier just for 2 days. Thanks, Amanda. And this is a statute of CMR and the law I referred to. So in this conversation, he was telling me that in the past, they had identified a couple of sources in town, and again, it's a very small town. They only had 2 gas stations in town, and one of them was willing to put a generator in so that if there was an emergency or there was power outage, he could still access fuel from their fuel station. He said they were all excited about that until a short time later, the business went bankrupt and closed, and it's been closed ever since. So his thought was, I can't depend on commercial providers to get me fuel in a disaster, just because of that example. And I think that's a very poignant example of where we could be someday if we didn't supply our own, or if we didn't maintain our own asset. So that's my concern, and that's why I do have a vested interest in keeping that fuel where I can access it, with a DPW, another public safety entity, can access it in an emergency or at any time, in the fire department. And I think, my attitude is, if we can save $10,000 or $12,000 or whatever that figure was a year, and put it towards the installation of the tank, it might take 30 years to pay for it. But, so what's the alternative? We spend $10,000, $12,000, $14,000 more a year to use some program and not have an asset at all? I almost think it's like I'm going to rent for 30 years and get evicted and not even own a house, or not own anything, or not have anything to show for it. At least in this case, I can say for the last 30 years, this town was better off having that particular asset. So I appreciate you listening to me. Again, I know there's other opinions out there, and I respect that 100%, and that's why I invited other people to express their opinions, but that just happens to be mine, and I want to make that clear. That's just my opinion. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Actually, I just want to clarify too, when I asked for a cost-benefit analysis, there's benefit to having the asset. There's benefit, basically that's the benefit that you see, is having the immediate access, and I understand that. And so it's kind of, what's the cost of peace of mind? And that's basically where you are. And that's completely understandable. I probably agree, so. But anyway, we'll ask if there's any question. I know that you had some thoughts on it in the past, so.
Yeah, so I had some thoughts on it, and I also had some email exchange with Carl. Normally, if you look at the cost-benefit analysis of such a service, you would factor in something which we didn't consider at all. Because if you have, let's say, 1 public gas station or 2 public gas stations in town, you need to factor in the time it takes one of your employees or policemen to get there, to fill the car, and to go back to the station. That might sound only like maybe 5 minutes, might be 10 minutes, but let's assume a salary of $40 an hour, calculate that by times you need to fill up the tank. I just did a quick estimate, that's about $20,000 a year of additional cost you would have if you would go something with the WEX program. And just that would pay for the tanks in 10 years, Carl.
Just one point of clarification too, something I learned today that, and I'd like, something we should investigate. Amanda alluded to the fact that the WEX program offers a rebate. What I understand, what I found out today and what I understand is that that's a federal tax rebate. And then we're entitled to that anyway, even though we purchase our own fuel. It's just a matter of filing some kind of statement annually, and they'll give us that rebate. So I mean, I don't know what kind of money it is, but if it's significant, I think it's something we should investigate if we're not already doing that. So that could be another cost savings, is what I'm saying. That maybe we haven't pursued yet, because I never knew about it until, in fact, it was a person from the WEX program who actually brought it to my attention.
Okay.
Well, may I then address this question to Amanda? In your spreadsheet, the lower right-hand side, you have a 1.3% WEX rebate.
Yep.
And if I read this correctly, that is based on the total cost of the, well, it's underneath the diesel fuel, so I don't know if it's diesel or gas.
It's actually the total cost of the far right, both columns, the total WEX. If you add, it's 1.3% of the 67,838 and the 25,820.
And
so it would have been the
totals
total. It totaled. I'm sorry, I didn't add that column there. 90. It was in the 90s. I forget what the total was.
So it's, well, it says that there's the rebate itself, if I'm reading this correctly, is $1,217.57. Yep. Okay. And so, Chief, you just said that that is a rebate that we could apply for as a town, irrespective of whether we use WEX.
That's right. That's what I understand. And but I think it's something that should be investigated to make sure that I'm understanding it correctly.
Yep.
So they're selling it as a rebate to their customers, but in fact, we're entitled to it, even though we buy contract fuel through the federal government. It's a federal government rebate that all you have to do is apply for every year.
Okay.
So we may be able to get it, if we're not already getting it. We may already be getting it, I don't know. I don't know about it. I'm not familiar with it. So.
And to broaden this to maybe the Chief Sullivan as well, do you all know any? Well, earlier in your comments, I inferred that about half of the cities and towns use what we use, which is a tank system.
Yes.
And about half of the others use some variation of the card system and retail outlets.
That's correct. Yeah.
Do you know of comparable sized cities and towns in this area that have the tank system, and if so, what is their experience?
I visited Groton just by chance. It was a chance thing. The chief I was with had to gas up his car, and as a matter of fact, Amanda was with me and with us. And so we went to their DPW, which I got to tell you is a beautiful facility. That's no disrespect here. No, it's just that they have a lot of money apparently, and we don't. But they have two 6,000-gallon above-ground tanks that they installed 10 years ago. They did it during the recession, so the company that does that on the state contract, a company called Comtanks, gave them a lot of financial assistance back then just to get the business. But they did a beautiful job. The tanks look brand new. They're 10 years old. I took pictures of them. I got them on my phone. And the DPW director said that, it's been seamless, and they have a great monitoring system, which actually is the same as we have, I believe, except we just need to update our software when and if this happens, to make it as good as theirs. So yeah, it was great for them. The other ones I talked to, same thing. I had no complaints at all about their systems of monitoring and so on and so forth and obtaining fuel.
I will also just say, I mean, one thing that, there's also towns that do a combination and have the tank, and like Shirley, for example, I think their police and other will fill up using the fleet card, and fire uses the DPW tank, but the tank is available.
Yeah, I think Shirley actually has an account with a local retailer, an actual account. I don't think they use the WEX program. From what I understand, the way he described it,
they just use an account.
Just an account that they have.
Sure. Yeah, I know we've discussed that was another thing that was brought up, was whether or not, you know, you make sure that you have the backup, but if it does at some point become cheaper to do it a different way, or maybe to investigate doing it a different way. Well, that's just for like later.
My thought was, yes, if we, you know, say we could get the WEX card for free. It's not going to cost us anything just to have one in the building.
Right.
But yeah, if there was an emergency, we use it, you know, we're going to pay a few cents more, but it's a backup system. So it may be worth just getting it anyway, if it doesn't really cost us anything to hold it. Okay. As long as we're not using it on a regular basis, because that would throw our, you know, that would affect.
Well, it's easy to construct a scenario where you're closer to a gas station than you would be to the DPW supply. And that may be one time when it's just excellent. It would be very useful to have the WEX card, some card, to get to fuel up at a gas station and get back to the emergency location. I
got to say, you know, I've been here for almost 41 years, and the only time I can ever remember having an issue with gas is when an officer neglected to fill the tank before he dropped the car off at the end of his shift, and I had to get pushed to the highway department to fill up, literally. So, no, I'm just being facetious. No, that's a true story, actually, but I'm being facetious. From what I understand, you know, I've been doing a lot of talking around town, around the area here with various cops, and one of the things, and this is the only time I've ever ran into it, I've gone to conferences at the Cape and had to use my own credit card to gas up to get back here. I mean, you can submit a statement to get reimbursed. Not a big deal to me, might be to other people, but you're paying pump price too. Yeah. So if I had a WEX card, I'd get a little bit of, you know, I'd get the discount, maybe not as much as the buying contract fuel, but I'd get a discount. And so from that standpoint, it might be better to have one kicking around for situations like that.
Yeah, well, the way you frame it, there's little downside.
The way I see it, yeah, the way I see it, but I mean, there's other people have opinions about it. Like I said, this is my emotional side of it, but I think it's maybe not practical. Other people might think differently, and I respect everybody's opinion. I just want you to know, I think from a public safety standpoint, we have to have some access to fuel. I've learned a lot about, you know, I've learned a lot about this, and it's generated a lot of thought. This was a great process, as much work as it's been. We've been overwhelmed, believe me, for 3 weeks. No. And not only that, in the middle of this, we both had personal issues we had to deal with, family issues. You know, I don't want to get into that, but it's really been grueling.
Right. So, before letting everybody go, I'll just, is there any other questions? I don't want to get too deep into the weeds, but yeah, if there are any other questions.
Regardless of which way this goes, once the tanks are decommissioned, what's the plan for fueling vehicles?
I'm sorry,
once the tanks are decommissioned, what's the backup plan going to be to fuel vehicles, whether we go with replacement tanks or the card system? Has any thought been given to that?
The backup plan? Well, I'm trying to get a hold of, first of all, a couple things. Obviously, I talked about the tanker, so the fuel tanker for the
diesel, yeah, but
that's diesel. Yeah, so actually at Carl's advice, I called the person who's building that gas station down in Whalen, and I'm waiting for a call back. That was a few days ago. I haven't heard back from him. What I'm going to ask is, would he be willing to install a switch, a generator switch, so that if anything happened, a hurricane, some situation or something with a, you know, we weren't able to get fuel readily, and we could have the fire department plug in a generator and get his pump started so that we could access his gasoline. I think that would be a good backup system. I probably, well, he's the same one that built the one on Leominster Shirley Road, so that too, I will probably approach them with the same idea and start, you know, looking for alternate fuel sources in the event of an emergency. And I think, like I said, down the road, we might think about just obtaining a WEX card just to have for alternate fuel sources as well. So they'll all try to cover all the bases, something I didn't think of, quite honestly. I haven't been thinking of. Too many other things to think about, you know? So, and my fault. And Kyle brought it to my attention that this is, you know, and it's a great idea. It's what I should be doing. So that's what we're gonna start, that's where we're going with this whole thing. So like I said, this has been a good thing, at least talking about it.
Okay, I guess my question is, I think we all agree we're going to take the tanks out of the ground, so the pumps are going to be shut down. What's going to happen when the pumps are shut down until either new tanks are installed or we go with a fleet charge?
The only thing I would say about that, and I don't want to overstep my bounds, but Jack and I were talking about an idea of how to resolve that. So if you decide to take the tanks out of the ground, we found that a place where we located an area at the DPW where we think the tanks would be better served, and probably even from an environmental standpoint. So what's the problem with installing the new tanks first, and then getting them running, and then taking the old tanks out? Then there's no break in service there. Right. Okay. So I don't know. I hope I didn't overstep, but you're doing a great job. All right.
Okay. Mr. Passios.
Dave Passios, 56 Whiting Street. I've got a couple other comments to make, but I need the number, a dollar amount that it's actually going to cost for the purchase of the new tanks and the installation to be fully hooked up and operational. A round number. I'm thinking it's $250,000. Is that number right?
That's actually higher than I think the estimate was that Mr. Rodriguez came in with.
Again, Dave. Yeah. The number that was submitted was $330,000.
That's
you got it?
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm sorry. You were looking for
a spreadsheet on that, laying out what the costs are. It goes to the larger question that I've been asked about, you know, what if it's less? What if it comes in less? Why are we allocating so much money? This just goes to the entire capital planning process.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry, I thought that, and correct me if I'm wrong, Dave, but I thought that your question went to the cost of the installation, not the cost of
the short
pulling it
answer
out
is
of the ground.
$330, Dave.
330.
That's the estimated.
That's removal also?
Yes.
So
and engineering.
$50,000 off of that for the removal, if I don't want the removal of the tanks.
You know what, I'll get you the spread. If you don't want the removal, the tanks have to come out.
No, I understand that. I just need a dollar amount, because what I'm trying to come up with, and I think it's a 30 or 35-year return on investment. If we're saving $7,000 a year by installing the new tanks and that system to supply fuel for the town, and we're spending, on the high side, $350,000 to install that and saving $7,000 a year, then it's 30 to 35 years for return on investment.
I believe that there was $100,000 budgeted for the removal of the tanks.
No.
No?
No, there's only 220 in the capital plan.
No, but there's 110 from last year's plan. Mr. Luck, go ahead.
That was a combined.
Right.
Yeah, Carl Luck, 50 Sunset Lane. I mostly wanted the opportunity to thank the chief for all those kind words, and Samantha and Amanda for all that hard work, because it really was a great effort. And the chief more than invited me into this process. He welcomed me into it, and it was really, really excellent. But we did do work on that as well. And we took Jack's estimate, and I even went back and looked at the video of when Jack initially, and it's all $50,000 is roughly the cost of getting the tanks out of the ground. So it's $280,000 was the answer to your question, Mr. Passios. I think that was basically what I wanted.
All right, thank you.
So that puts us in the vicinity of 30 years on return on investment, which I don't see that as a problem. I just wanted to put that number out there.
Sure.
That it's, going to take that period of time to recoup what we invest in putting the tanks there, but the asset will still be there. After 25 or 30 years, should be able to use it well beyond that. Also, the other point I'd like to make is that I think, I'm not sure what word to use, forcing another look at this or requesting another look and the analysis brought forward some opportunities that we wouldn't have looked at if this process hadn't been undertaken. I mean, now we're looking at possibly 50% refund or grant money. That's all stuff that was not even thought about going into this. So I think it's well worth taking a second and third look at some of these things sometime. And I don't disagree that we need to go the direction we're talking about. The other thing is, if it was 20 or 30 years from now and we had 10 more gas stations in town, it would be a much more viable program with the cards, because you'd have so many options to refuel your vehicles. Whereas Fitchburg has that. They have them all over the city. So I appreciate all the work that was put into it, and I do support the tanks. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Sure, can I just clarify something?
Sure.
In support of the capital plan, and in support of the DPW director, the one thing I want to remind everybody is that we, and I mean all of us, department heads, go out and look for estimates. And in this case, he's getting estimates, but we can't do anything until the money's appropriated. So it's almost like putting the cart before the horse.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't mean that the estimate he gave everybody is going to be what it's going to cost. That just means he got an estimate, at the best of his ability, to get the best estimates he can. Then when it goes out, it gets appropriated. Say it goes out to bid and it comes in a lot less. That money's going, the balance of that money is going to end up back in the town anyway. It's going to correct me if I'm wrong, ends up back in capital, right?
Yes.
So it's I know, I go through this all the time. Trying to even get people to call you back or get accurate estimates, and it's a nightmare. So in this case, it's a little different than the small stuff I buy, cruisers. This is big, and it's got to be appropriated before it can go out the bid.
Yes.
It's backwards.
Yes,
more or less.
There's nothing more fun than municipal procurement.
All right.
Trust me, I know. Okay. All right. If there's no more questions, we're going to continue on with the articles. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you all for all of that work.
Yes, great work by all of you. Thank you. So, back to the warrant. Article 7, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate or transfer from available funds. This is for the fiscal 20 budget, omnibus budget. Article 8 is the salary administration plan for the comp and classification for all non-union employees. Every 3 years, it's in the personnel bylaw that's updated. Article 9 is to transfer funds to the stabilization fund, and that's, as I said earlier, is $100,000 from free cash. Article 10 is to transfer funds to the special purpose stabilization fund, and that's $200,000 from free cash. Article 11 is to transfer funds into the other post-employment benefit trust fund in the amount of $150,000 from the town appropriation and $656 from the sewer for their employee. Article 12 is to raise and appropriate to transfer funds for the sewer enterprise budget for fiscal 20. Article 13 is to transfer $27,521 into the sewer capital reserve stabilization fund. Article 14 is to for the solid waste disposal enterprise fund for fiscal 20. Article 15 is for the water enterprise fund for fiscal 20 to fund that. Articles 16, 17, 18, and 19 all deal with the public access, and the chairman explained those. So the first article is to create the enterprise fund. The second article is to fund the budget through the enterprise. The Article 18 is if that didn't pass, so they can still operate next year, is to do it the same way from receipts reserved for $152,000. That's the budget. Article 19 is to appropriate $120,000 from the Comcast Tech Capital Grant for PEG Access Committee for a capital budget. Article 20 is to appropriate $35,000 from the sale of cemetery lots to be used for the care and improvement and embellishment of town cemeteries.
Okay, we're going to stop there.
Okay.
Those are all of the, before we get into the buildings.
All right.
So I'm just going to ask if anybody has any questions related to any of those first articles. No questions. Okay, so then we're just going to keep moving.
Okay.
Any questions up here for anybody on anything presented thus far?
No, we haven't.
Nothing. Okay.
Article 21 is to for the conveyance of the old primary school building at 30 School Street. Article 22 is for the conveyance of the Brooks House, of the property and the land. Article 23 is for the conveyance of just the building of the Brooks House property. Article 24 is for funding for a design and engineering services to consolidate town offices, school offices, and community space at the TC Passios building.
Okay, let's stop. Right, was there anybody that was going to speak to the conveyance, or is this something that's the same thing that we've been talking about at town meeting for a while? Is this different?
Similar.
Well, I guess the conveyance, so basically, we're going to vote to transfer the care, custody, and control of the land back to the Board of Selectmen?
No, this would give the selectmen the authority to sell or lease the old primary building.
Okay, so it's not doing anything other than, I guess I'm confused because I thought we had already done that, but evidently not.
No.
Okay.
This, they've been having a lot of discussion on town buildings. That's continued from previous years. They had a meeting with the Architectural Preservation Commission, and as well as Historical Society. And it's the APDC's position that we either repair or sell that property.
Okay. And then the same is true for...
So the same for the Brooks.
The Brooks House?
They, at that same meeting, it was also discussed regarding the Brooks, they would be in agreement with just selling the building as well if we wanted.
Okay. Okay, so does anyone have any questions on any of the building reuse question? I mean, I'm just remembering the building reuse discussion has been going on for a long time. So.
Hi, yes, Katie Adams, Williams Drive, member of the Board of Selectmen. I'm glad you raised questions about what it is we're doing with this article, because I myself don't really know. I'd really hope the town has a comprehensive plan before we sell valuable municipal land. And I also feel that if a great plan is presented in regards to something to be built there, this land can be conveyed through town meeting. And through the people, and I would hesitate for the town to give us the power to do that in absence of a plan. The Architectural Preservation District was one group that came to a meeting. Other groups were against selling it. They recommend that it be repaired and dealt with. However, that's one small group in town, and I don't really think that they have the responsibility to make a long-term decision for core pieces of municipal land. These articles were sort of written and created in a draft warrant before I ever saw them or participated in open meeting. These conveyance articles have been voted down twice through town meeting, once November 2016, and then in May 2017 they've bubbled up again without real open discussion about what will become of that land. It's a potential site for a future municipal building. We could brainstorm all day long until we've come to a concrete understanding of what's going to happen in town. For example, if people go along with the article to look into moving to TC Passios, but we find out that it's a $20 million project, the town may say, I don't know if we want to spend $20 million on that old school. Maybe we build a new one on that site for a similar price. So I don't think we're ready to convey land, and I just wanted to put that out there as a often lone dissenter of the board's opinions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from up here? No? No, okay. Oh, I'm sorry.
Ron DeLisio, 181 Reservoir Road. I'm just curious, is this the final draft of Article 24?
So for the design, the selectmen still have to vote on, they did approve to put these articles onto the warrant. It still needs town council review.
Which point of clarification did you want to address?
Article 24. And I guess my concern with this article is that it wants to spend money for design and engineering, but it's not telling me how much money it wants to spend on an idea that I'm not totally sold on. So I would just say,
okay.
I would not be in support of that article.
Okay, yeah, no, I understand. And I believe that what will happen at town meeting is that a number will be attached to that.
Yes.
So a number will be attached to that at the point of town meeting when you'll be able to vote on it.
Okay.
Okay, yeah. I think that's true of many of these articles. Mr. Passios?
There's one in the document that you have, the estimate that I have, I'm still trying to get a couple estimates, is $150,000 for that.
Okay.
For which?
Article 24?
For Article 24, which is the design and engineering services.
That's the current estimate. So I mean, basically what I'm going to say at this point is because we don't have a number that we would most likely defer to town meeting. Hannah?
After Mr. Passios, I do have a question.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr.
Passios.
Yeah, I'll be real brief. I just wanted to make the comment on the primary building that there is a sizable number of taxpayers and citizens in this town that want that building down. They wanted it down 3 years ago, and for reasons that everybody knows, that proposal was not approved. But there is a large number of people in town that want that building gone.
I'm sorry, wait a minute. Passios?
The old primary building.
Old primary building. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And then my question is, on Article 24, you say you're making to consolidate town offices, school offices, and community space. Where do classrooms fit into that? Can that be like added in there just to define that classrooms would be a possibility instead of just having it under community space? Because community space could mean anything. And if our grades are getting to expand and they might have to go into that building, I think that we should really have classrooms really defined in there as well.
That's a good point. The conceptual design that was done, that the selectmen and the school both reviewed, there were 3 conceptual plans. The third being retaining a wing that would have extra space for, it could be classrooms.
No, I understand that. I just think that having the wording,
that's
school classrooms being in there.
Good point.
Probably help.
Okay. Then we'll move on.
Article 25, maybe I'll let the land use director come up for these. You can take over from here.
You can have a little break, yes.
So I have the full text of the bylaw, and I'll read it into the record. It's only 8 pages. Article 25
You can read it into the record at your own public hearing.
We more or less did over
Yes,
6
you did.
months. Article 25 is, excuse me, a bylaw to regulate the location of marijuana establishments in the town of Lunenburg. This article and the following 6 articles all deal with marijuana. This is perhaps the most important article to pass of the 7, because without this, so there's 7 articles, 1 to regulate, 6 to prohibit. The prohibition articles require ratification by town meeting by 2/3 vote, and would require a ballot initiative or a ballot question for each of those articles to pass. So if we say Article 25 were not to pass, and Articles 26 through I'm not good with math, so 31 were to all pass, but not pass at the ballot, all of the marijuana establishments would be unregulated in town and would be able to go wherever they're most closely associated with in zoning. Marijuana establishments per the statute 94G are not allowed to be prohibited by not inclusion in the zoning. That's not the right word, but I'm failing to come up with it. So if you don't have a bylaw that regulates marijuana, they're allowed to go where they're most closely associated. So passing Article 25 at a minimum puts in a set of regulations on where they can go, how they can be located, how they're regulated, and having appropriate offsets. Then passing Articles 26 through, I've already lost the number, 31, would, what that would do would give the voters at the election on May 18th the opportunity to choose establishments that they wish to prohibit and vote in the affirmative on those questions to prohibit those establishments. And if any one or all 6 were to pass by 51% or larger or greater than 50%, they would be prohibited in the town, and we'd have to do a correction at town meeting in November. It's going to be the same for any of them. If 25 passes and none of 26 through 31 pass, we'll have to go back and do some amendments if they pass a town meeting. But it's imperative that we have some regulation on the books. So 25 is an article that covers all of the marijuana establishments, their regulation, their location requirements, and zoning setbacks. 26 through 31 are prohibition articles.
Okay, and then just clarify, what is going to appear on the ballot? All of these?
26 through 31, just the prohibition articles. So
25 does not, so 25
correct. 25 is a zoning bylaw that just creates regulations. So there's no need for that to appear on the ballot. The way that MGL 94G is constructed, if you were a yes community in the 2016 referendum, which Lunenburg was 53 to 47, you're required to do a 2-tier prohibition. You have to do it at town meeting and through a local ballot. If we had been a no community, we could do it just through zoning regulation or general bylaw.
Okay. All right. And then any questions on any of the marijuana? All right, basically you didn't talk about Article 32, but is 3% the most that we could tax?
Yes.
That's the most, okay, thanks. Well, when you did that, I wasn't sure we'd go higher.
Oh,
no.
I think everybody wishes, but it's not. No.
Okay.
Yeah. So Article 33, are we on? Is also Planning Board.
I skipped over 32 because...
Do you have 34 as well?
Yes, I can give you information on 34. So Article 33 is an addition to Section 5.6 of the zoning bylaw. This is our cluster development bylaw, and there's a loophole in the bylaw that would allow someone with a large parcel to propose multiple subdivisions that were smaller than the required 25 acres, thus skirting the requirement to do cluster and preserve open space within the subdivision. This paragraph is intended to prevent segmentation. So it requires that subdivisions that are co-owned, in common ownership, et cetera, that abut each other, fall into the cluster bylaw so that people aren't segmenting to skirt the law and be able to kind of jam more stuff in with the cluster.
Questions on that one? Okay.
34, in 2015, the Zoning Board of Appeals granted a comprehensive permit to the property at 250 Whalum Road, Whalum Luxury Apartments. As part of their approval, they required the installation of playground equipment, a bus shelter, and the donation of a slightly larger than 3/4 acre parcel to the town of Lunenburg. The developer has built and occupied the apartments, has constructed the playground equipment and bus shelter, has prepared an A&R plan and created the parcel and submitted a deed to the town. So this would be the final step in any conveyance. So ultimately it's up to town meeting whether they accept a gift of land, and I think that there's some details that will be worked out between now and then as to whether or not certain committees will support the gift or not.
Okay, because basically we're talking about a parcel of land that has a park. And
I guess you could call it a park, yes. It has play equipment on it. It's grass and play equipment.
Okay, and we haven't heard on parks whether they want to accept this.
I think that they are leaning towards opposing it for some details. I don't want to speak for them,
sure.
But I don't know that they've made a final determination.
Yeah, well, I just figured we just poured a lot of money into putting playground equipment.
That's correct.
Right there. So I was, okay. All right.
If I could, just some clarification on that park, we spoke about that at the last meeting.
Okay.
That the Park Commission, I can't speak for all of them, but they are more than leaning towards not accepting it.
Okay.
Because it would have to pass, which it hasn't yet, all the safety conditions, as we did with the new, it hasn't passed any of that yet, so they certainly wouldn't accept it until that was done, and even that, after that was done, they may choose not to accept it for maintenance issues and things like that.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Article 35.
Okay, Article 35 speaks to the charter. The charter, I will say at this point, the charter that's going to be presented at town meeting has been posted online. So anyone that wants to review the charter, I would strongly recommend to look it up there. It's also been, there's copies that have been distributed to the senior center, the library.
They were going various places.
They were going to various places, so that people would have access to them. And I would encourage people to read that. When the warrant article goes out, I think the article itself seems to closely address some of them. I will say that one of the things that is not here is an article that addresses whether or not we will have the town clerk be elected or appointed. The Charter Review Committee determined to take no action on that. So in the charter, there is no charter change. The town clerk continues to be elected. So actually, I think we're down to just 2 articles for the Charter Review Committee, which will hopefully mean that we don't have to meet more than one day.
And these 2 articles, this is final language. These have been approved through town council as far as.
Okay.
So there won't be any changes to that. So 36 is another charter article. 37 is the Board of Selectmen were approached by the owner at Ward Solar Company doing a project at 190 Electric Avenue to enter a pilot agreement. So the process is it would require town meeting approval to authorize the selectmen to negotiate that pilot and the terms.
Okay.
38 is a citizen's petition. So 38, 39, 40, 41, 42, and 43 are all citizen petitions. So 38 is to amend the zoning map by rezoning portions of the land located at 131 Leominster Shirley Road from Residence B District, Commercial District, so the entire lot is in the Commercial District. So I'm reading verbatim. Portions of 151 Leominster Shirley Road from Commercial District to Office Space and Industrial District, so the entire lot is in the Office Park and Industrial District, and portions of 181 Leominster Shirley Road from Residence B District to Office Park and Industrial District, so the entire lot is in the Office Park and Industrial District, as shown on a plan on file at the Office of the Town Clerk, Board of Selectmen, and the Planning Board. So you'll notice you may see typos in some of these. Our policies to take citizen petitions in their form that they're given. So we're not allowed to change the wording for citizen petitions.
Am I correct in assuming that no author of any of the citizens petitions are here tonight to?
I am assuming so. They can come to a future meeting, we can get in touch with them. These were...
Sure, no, I just wanted to, just check. Okay.
Article 39, to see if the town will vote to grant the Lunenburg Historical Society, Inc. an easement to continue its 53-year use of a certain tract of land described as follows, beginning at the southeasterly corner of the property of the Lunenburg Historical Society, Inc. on the westerly side of School Street, south 70 to 930 east, approximately 9.5, excuse me, to the westerly side of the School Street at land to be retained by the inhabitants of Lunenburg. Thence north 1055 east, approximately 145 feet to the point of beginning, consisting of approximately 0.25 acre, with exact angles and distances to be confirmed by survey.
Is that for parking or something?
I'm assuming so. We haven't received notification, but that's my assumption. Article 40, to see whether the town will vote to amend its zoning bylaw by adding section 240.4.1J, parentheses 7, exhibition and workshops, any outdoor or indoor farming or artistic performance or exhibition, including but not limited to music, plays, and staged readings, poetry, dance, farming, and art fairs and exhibitions, or any lectures, talks, trainings, or workshops on educational topics, including but not limited to farming, health, nature, or art, and by adding to Lunenburg Code Section 254.1G, parentheses use table, the corresponding use 4.1J, parentheses 7, exhibition and workshops to be allowed in all districts pursuant to an entertainment license or Sunday entertainment license by the Board of Selectmen. These two, 40 and 41, are citizen petitions from Mr. Massey related to a recent discussion about special event permits and use of the property there. Article 41, sorry, lost. Goes through description of special permit guidelines to create a general bylaw on special permit guidelines. Article 42 seeks to change the special permit granting authority in section 4.13, solar energy systems of the protective bylaw of the town of Lunenburg. Under the current bylaw, the planning board grants special permits when it comes to photovoltaic installations. I am seeking to change the language so that the zoning board is the granting authority, and it describes the proposals. I'm not going to go through all of those. Article 43, to see if the town of Lunenburg would vote at town meeting to move the sewer boundary on proposed Lot 7 back to 400 feet so new house could tie into the sewer main in Prospect Street. This Lot 7 is presently shown on a draft plan drawn by Whitman and Bingham Associates dated March 21st, 2019. The reason we can't tie into sewer now is that it is going to be a reduced frontage lot and get the 175 feet at the front of the lot. It pushes the house back out of the existing sewer boundary. This lot is currently owned by Amy Whitcomb, Rakuti, and Charles Whitcomb. And that is the end of the
I'd ask if there's any
warrant.
questions on those last ones, but I don't think there's anyone here to speak to them.
Correct.
So, all right, Mr. Passios.
Just like to make a quick, Dave Passios, 56 Whiting Street. Quick comment about the two articles that were, is it 40 and 41 that were submitted
By Mr. Massey?
for, in his, actually it was submitted by registered voters, so it was Mr. Massey who's working along with registered voters to bring this forward. I just applaud him for being willing to take that step under the pressures he's been under the last couple of years. This is the beginning of the conversations that should have started 2 years ago. And this was the only way to bring it to the forefront and to the voters and get people all over town talking about it and come up with something that benefits everybody in town. Thank you.
Thank you. It's easier to ask from the... I wasn't sure when you were doing that. Do I have something on my list?
Should I ask a question? Carl Luck, 50 Sunset Lane. And I just didn't know if you were about to end the public hearing, so I want to make my comment before you end the public hearing regarding the 6 marijuana prohibition articles, because there may be some discussion about whether or not there's a financial impact and whether or not you make a recommendation or not. I would argue that this is probably potentially the biggest financial impact to Lunenburg that you could have coming in. This is a huge industry, and if they are prohibited, there is significant amount of revenue that this town will not have an opportunity to take. So I would suggest that there is significant financial impact to those 6 articles. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. If there are no other questions, then I was about to close the public hearing, and we will begin to go through the articles and make a position. I did hear from Heather today about whether or not we want to change our language. I don't know. Typically, we will either make a motion to recommend approval, a motion not to recommend approval, or we will wait until town meeting to take our vote. Or we will, there's no direct financial impact, thank you. So, and that's basically what we're going to do with each item. There is no shame in deferring if you don't feel comfortable. Do that, and unfortunately now, actually, was it today you sent me that, Heather? The 4... All right, well, we'll just go ahead through, and if we change, we'll talk about changing the language later if we do decide to do that. I think that it still will follow the same way. So let's start from, do we have Article 1? I believe that we would not make a recommendation because that's just to hear the town reports. Article 2, to see if the town will vote to amend the bylaws to replace the current table. So I think that basically, since that is, it's not that it has budget impact, but it is something that we would probably want to speak to as a finance committee, that there's to put all of those revolving accounts into a bylaw so we don't have to mess with it regularly. So, does anyone have a feeling at all about Article 2, to see if the town will vote to amend the general bylaws to replace the current table with the table as printed?
From a point of transparency and ease of use, I think it's a good change, personally.
Okay. It almost sounded like a motion.
Well, I just wanted to
I say we motion to recommend approval.
Recommend approval.
I will second that.
Any questions, discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, Finance Committee recommends approval. We may, I don't think we'll have to take a vote at town meeting. Unfortunately, with George not here,
Yeah, it's right.
to weigh in, it's, all right. To see if the town will vote to authorize revolving funds for various departments, boards, committees, agencies, or offices in the amounts below. Do I have a motion?
I move to recommend approval.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mark. Any discussion? Questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, Article 4, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate or transfer from available funds a sum of money for payment of prior year expenses. This one, I believe we will defer. We know we have $500. We don't know if we have anything more than that, or is that the final number?
To the best of my knowledge, that's the final number, but I haven't, it might not be that exact number, it could be cents or something, so.
All right, so when the warrant goes out, it's not going to have a figure in it, so we'll just defer. We'll defer, okay. Article 5, unless anybody wants to not defer, but it seems the best, okay. Article 5, to see if the town will vote to transfer from available funds all sums of money necessary to amend amounts voted in the 2019 budget. Again, we have insufficient information. I would say that we're going to defer.
Yes.
To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate, borrow, or transfer from available funds a sum of money for the FY 2020 capital plan as appearing in the Capital Planning Committee report, or take any action relative thereto. Do I have a motion?
I move that we recommend approval.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Article 7, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate, or, God, I need my reading glasses, I'm sorry. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate or transfer from available funds a sum of money to defray the charges and expenses of the town for FY 2020 and to fix the salaries and compensation of all elected officials of the town and any other items included in the budget of the town manager, or take any other actions thereto. Typically, that would involve the number. So the number for the budget is
38,058,164.30.
Okay, then
What
can...
is it?
Nice.
Did he give a number?
He did,
8
yes.
million.
All right, so can you put that into a motion?
I put in a motion to approve.
Recommend approval.
To recommend approval for Article 7 for the budget of 38,058,164.30.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any questions? Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, to see if the town will vote to replace the current salary schedule in Article 15, Salary Administration Plan of the General Bylaws, with FY 2020 salary schedule as recommended by the Personnel Committee, which authorizes a cost of living increase for fiscal year 2020.
Defer.
Yeah, it's a defer. Do you know what the increase is? Well, we actually will probably want to see the schedule.
Yeah.
So we will defer. Article 9, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate or transfer from available funds a sum of money to the stabilization fund. All right, so the amount that they're wanting to send to the stabilization fund is $100,000, is that correct?
Yep, 100,000.
Okay.
Yep.
Do I have a motion to that effect?
I move that we recommend approval to Article 9 for $100,000.
Second.
Okay, actually, let me just go back. Is that the correct number for the stabilization, or is that the special purpose stabilization?
That's the right number.
Okay. So we had a motion. Who seconded that? Jay seconded that? Okay. Do we have any discussion? Questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Article 10. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate or transfer from available funds a sum of money into the Special Purpose Stabilization Fund or take any action relative thereto. Special purpose was,
200,000.
okay, do I have, but when someone makes the motion, just include the number?
Yeah.
Anybody making a motion?
I move that we vote to recommend approval for Article 10 in the amount of $200,000.
Second.
Any discussion? Questions? All in favor? Aye. Article 11, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate or transfer from available funds a sum of money into the OPEB trust fund that was created on, okay. So that amount was 150,000, so.
150,000 plus 656,
Plus 600, okay.
$150,656.
Okay, so can we have
In
a?
no sense.
Is that a motion?
Yeah, I move that we recommend approval for Article 11 in the amount of $150,656.
Second.
Okay, before we do that. No, that's fine, okay. I just wanted to make sure it was okay to do them both together, but I believe so.
Okay. You mean the two separate streams of money?
Yeah, but since it's from available funds, I think it's fine, so. Any questions, discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate or transfer from available funds a sum of money to operate the sewer enterprise fund. Do we have that figure in front of us?
$838,679.
Is that the sewer enterprise fund?
Yep. Sewer enterprise budget.
Carl? Yep.
Yeah, I was just looking at, okay.
Okay.
Did you make that motion? Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Questions, discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. To see if the town will vote to transfer from available funds the sum of $27,521 into the Sewer Capital Reserve Stabilization Fund or take any other action relative thereto. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second? Second. Questions? Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Article 14, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate or transfer from available funds the sum of money to operate the Solid Waste Disposal Program Enterprise Fund.
I don't remember how much that was, did we?
That was 302.
300?
And 200. 300. Thank you.
302?
Yeah.
Even?
Oh, it was even.
Okay, so 302,000. So do I have a motion to that effect?
Motion to that effect.
All right, so I have a motion to raise and appropriate or transfer from available funds $302,000.
Okay. Second.
Any questions, discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Article 15, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate or transfer from available funds a sum of money to operate the Water Department Water Enterprise Fund. That figure?
25,000.
25,000. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve the 25,000 to operate the Water Department and Water Enterprise Fund for fiscal year 2020.
Second?
I will second that. Or, well, Mark did.
Any questions or discussion? No. All in favor?
Aye.
Article 16, to see if the town will vote to establish a Public Education and Government Access Enterprise Fund. And transfer all funds remaining in the access and cable-related receipts reserved for appropriation fund.
Does that have financial impact for us? Not really.
It doesn't necessarily have budgetary impact, but it is a change in the type of fund. I don't know, do you have a...
Yeah.
I mean, basically, it does, the way that historically they had to set their budget was they could only budget what was available from the funds that were left over at the end of the previous year, which was kind of painful. So this is basically just saying we're going to take it out of regular and put it into an enterprise fund. Instead of fiscal impact.
Well, but you had explained to me that by being able to do that, they're able to forecast. So if they forecast incorrectly, then that is problematic.
This is true.
Yeah.
Not saying that they would, but that's where my thought goes with that. Not that I wouldn't support it.
Well, I think we would, I mean, basically, we'll go ahead and make a recommendation. I think that, because at some point, we're gonna then have to, if we don't recommend approving that, then it makes no sense to approve moving the money into, or spending the money out of that account. If
Yeah,
we
the
didn't.
later articles.
I'm sorry?
Yeah, the later articles.
Yeah.
I think we should.
But then that could just be because it's 9:30 or 8:30. Actually, I don't even know what to do.
Well, my understanding is we need to vote on 16, 17, and 19 because Article 18 only comes into play if Article 17 doesn't pass. That was my understanding.
Could you clarify that for me? I'm suffering. Information overload.
Article 17 would just take the money that they have in their existing fund right now and move it into an enterprise fund at the beginning of FY20. Article 18 is to fund the operating budget of the enterprise fund in FY20. And Article 19 is to fund the capital costs of the enterprise fund in FY20.
So everything is assuming that Article 16 passes, otherwise the public access cable gets no budget.
Well, that's why 18's there, because if 16 doesn't pass, then they would vote on 18 to keep it the way that it is right now. Because either way, they need to have a budget voted, whether it's a receipts reserve for appropriation account or an enterprise fund, they still need to have a budget adopted at town meeting.
All right, well, then we can pass on 16. I don't know if, well, because we'll vote on, will we vote on?
Well, 16 is to.
I would anticipate we would vote on 17 and 19.
Or we could just wait till town meeting, I'm just saying.
I think
you can see what the, we could have like a 1 and then if this happens, then this is our suggestion for this, or if that happens, then here's our suggestion for that. Or we just wait.
Or we could just say, you know, I recommend approval for all of them.
Yeah.
Because if we recommend approval for all of them, we're probably safer.
Yeah.
I'm good with that too.
All right. So let's just recommend, all right, so Article 16, I'm sorry, John.
Well, just individually.
Well, no, individually we would do it, but yeah.
I guess I'm too literal, but yeah.
Yeah, no, I understand.
Big checkbox.
Was a nice try, Terry.
Okay, Article 16. Do I have a motion to recommend approval or to not recommend approval?
I move that we recommend approval, Article 16.
I second.
Any discussion or questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Article 17. All right, and this is to appropriate, so, and the sum is in there, so. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
152,000?
152,000.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Article 18 is again to appropriate 152,000.
I move that we recommend approval to appropriate 152,000 to fund the public access cable committee operating budget.
Second.
Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, Article 19, to see if the town will vote to appropriate from the Comcast Tech Capital Grant Fund the sum of $120,000 to fund the PEG Access Committee FY20 capital budget.
I move to recommend the approval to fund the sum of $120,000. Fund the PG Access Committee FY20 budget.
Second.
Any questions, comment? All in favor?
Aye.
Article 20, to see if the town will vote to appropriate the sum of $35,000 from the sale of cemetery lots for the care and improvement and embellishment of the town cemeteries.
I move that we recommend approval of Article 20 to appropriate $35,000 from the sale of cemetery lots.
Second.
For use and care of improvement and embellishment of the town cemeteries.
Short. Second.
Questions? All in favor?
Aye.
To see if the town will vote to, I already did that, I'm sorry, Article 21, to see if the town will vote to transfer the care, custody, and control of the land and/or buildings known as the old primary school building.
Can I suggest that we wait for Articles 21, 22, 23, and 24 till town meeting? Just in case any new information comes up.
Yes, actually, it makes sense. We have no numbers attached to any of them, so we would
Well, we
defer.
do on one of them, on 24.
We don't have the numbers. We don't have the, we have an estimate.
Oh, well. Oh.
Yeah, if she gets more estimates in, then.
Okay. No, it's in the cost.
Wait till town
It says
meeting.
150,000 on 24.
Put in a number so you have something.
Yeah.
But it's not in the warrant yet, so.
Oh, okay.
Oh, okay.
We're seeing this.
Either way,
original
I say we just wait.
Okay.
See that.
Yeah, defer. And Article 25, 26, 27.
Okay, well, wait a minute, let's finish with 24, just to decide whether we're going to defer. Just, don't try to sneak by there. All right. Do I have a motion to defer? Or do you want a motion to?
I motion to defer, do I say separately, Articles 21, 22, 23, 24?
You can just say 21, 22, 23, 24, I'll accept that.
Okay. I motion to defer Articles 21, 22, 23, and 24.
You get a second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, to see if the town will vote to amend the Code of Lunenburg to modify Section 250-4.1 by inserting 250-4.1. Is that a O or 0? 1 O?
The letter O.
Thank you. 1 to 6. To delete section, oh God. All right, for the temporary moratorium on sale and distribution of recreational marijuana to replace it with non-medical marijuana establishments or take any other action related thereto.
These all have costs for me. Defer these.
So we're going to delete the temporary moratorium so that it can establish non-medical marijuana establishments.
Isn't that just a
So
bylaw?
this isn't a financial.
Well, actually, I think as it was explained, that it's a potential source of revenue.
Yeah.
But if this is just a wording, is that?
Oh, no.
Oh, no,
This is
not just
basically
a
making
wording.
it possible to do it.
Yep.
This is basically what creates the bylaw that regulates
The on-off.
the marijuana establishments.
Well, if I also recall what Adam said, this does allow the town to set regulations and locations to really carefully monitor the non-medical marijuana.
Right.
Yeah.
So if you want it not
Very important.
regulated, okay, so
But
worst
where
case, once this passes, then, all right, Adam, actually, can you clarify this for me?
Or like, can you also maybe tell us, I don't know, word for word, or is it like too long?
I haven't memorized all 8 pages.
It's 8 pages.
It is 8 pages long.
Well, let me tell you
all
what
right.
my question is. All right, so
Trying to figure out
Article
what we're deleting
25,
or adding.
because it's voted at town meeting, and that's the only place it's voted,
Right.
is the prohibition being voted at,
Town meeting
Ballot.
and the ballot.
so if the prohibition is voted to prohibit, what happens to Article 25?
Oh, what a tangled web. So there's 6 types of marijuana establishments, hence 6 prohibition articles. So if all 6 were to pass, those would be the ruling legislation. And at the fall town meeting, the language, if Article 25 were to pass, of Article 25 would be deleted. If Article 25 passes and any number between 1 and 6 of the, or 1 and 5 of the prohibition articles were to pass at town meeting and the ballot, we'd have to adjust the language of 25 to remove those marijuana establishments that become prohibited. The other thing I will say is, and I've heard this committee say it before, with zoning, by creating zoning, we don't guarantee that anything will happen, just that the table is set for someone to avail themselves of the opportunity. As Mr. Luck alluded to earlier in the meeting, marijuana establishments are a burgeoning industry. They are seemingly popping up everywhere at a slow rate. At some point, the dam is going to break and they're going to start popping up a little more frequently. But like anything else, we don't know what the market looks like specifically here in Lunenburg. So there is financial incentives associated with retail locations that are specific to general fund revenue. There are host community agreements for all marijuana establishments that are intended to balance the costs of their impacts.
Okay, so basically, I guess what my sense would be that we would make a recommendation on Article 25, but not necessarily any of the other articles.
How can you make a recommendation when you don't know what the words are?
I'm sorry?
How do you make a recommendation when you don't know what you're inserting and deleting and what the rules would be?
I can tell you what you're deleting. Okay. You're deleting a bylaw that, excuse me, by language of the bylaw becomes defunct as of the end of May. So the moratorium is a prevention of the location of marijuana establishments until such time as the town has conducted a planning exercise to regulate them, which is the language of Article 25, and or it sunsets at a certain date. So currently the bylaw prohibits the location of marijuana establishments in the community. I can give you the general sense of what Article 25 says. It says that these establishments are allowed, all of them are allowed in the industrial districts. Retail locations would be allowed per the proposed bylaw in the commercial districts, in the Summer Street overlay and the industrial district, and then cultivation would be allowed across our 3 residential districts, A, B, and outlying, as well as in the industrial district.
That's what I was looking for. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Now, when you say cultivation, you mean cultivation on a commercial scale or on an individual use scale?
We do not and cannot, per statute, regulate home cultivation up to 12 plants for personal use. If you try to sell that, that's a whole separate issue. That is protected by the statute. So any adult can grow 6 plants. Any household with 2 or more adults can grow up to 12 plants. This would be commercial scale cultivation, as licensed and regulated by the Cannabis Control Commission.
Thank you.
So we should probably recommend or vote on Article 25 and 32. 32 is the 3% sales tax. Because those are the 2 which have...
And if that's the max sales tax, then I get the max on that if it's going to go through.
All right. All right, well then, do I have a motion regarding Article 25?
I move that we recommend approval of Article 25.
I have a second.
Second.
Do I have any discussion? I'm sorry, I'm just trying to check to see what it was that, if George had weighed in on this one, just to see if he had any thought. No. Okay.
So is the temporary moratorium going to expire? Is that what you said?
Yeah.
In a month or so.
I think that was the rush to get everything through and finished. in time for town meeting. All right, so we have a motion and we have a second. Any other discussion or questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. All right. I'm going to say that we're going to have, well, I guess I shouldn't say. Article 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31. All right, we can either defer, or if we want to determine that we're not going to make any recommendation regarding any of those prohibitions.
I feel much better about deferring to town meeting and just rather delaying until we hear the arguments at town meeting before we weigh in either way.
Yeah.
Just collect more information.
Okay.
My recommendation.
Okay. Can I have a motion to that effect?
I move that we postpone a recommendation on Articles 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, and 31, I think, to until to town meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And I will say, yeah, we'll just need to make note that what we've recommended to defer is all of the prohibition articles, in case the Board of Selectmen change the order next week.
Yep. Okay, sure.
All right, to see if the town will vote to accept to impose an excise on the retail sales of marijuana for adult use. Do we have a motion?
I move that we recommend approval of Article 32.
A second.
Any discussion? Is it bad luck to do anything bad to a ladybug? Okay. No question. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. Article 33, anti-segmentation. Defer?
I was trying to figure out when I was listening to the discussion about anti-segmentation, whether it had any direct financial effect at all. Should we wait? Should we weigh in or not? I don't know. What is your all's opinion?
I don't think it has any financial impact.
Certainly not obvious.
Yeah.
I don't know if anybody out there would guide us a little bit.
Probably not. I mean, all right, so basically what it comes down to is trying to have people.
Well, I could see circumstances where, yes, it would have a direct financial effect, but I don't know.
I think it's one of those things that in and of itself, it doesn't have a direct financial impact. Applied to certain situations, it may. Sort of similar to all zoning bylaws. It's creating a regulation around the development of land. And how you develop land always has some manner of financial impact, positive or often negative in the case of most residential development. So I don't know that it increases or decreases the amount of development potential. It just changes the way that it looks.
Yeah, and that's, I guess that helps. I know that in years past, we have not weighed in on most zoning articles. I can't remember the last zoning article that came in that we made a recommendation.
Okay.
You know. So,
I'm used to you guys just pushing off and saying no direct financial impact, so I'm comfortable with whatever you say, but.
Okay, thanks.
We're talking about cluster developments of marijuana shops?
No.
Okay.
Article 33.
I'm like, what are
No, it's somebody taking a big piece of property and
These are purely residential developments.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, still on.
But we know from the previous discussion that the people who reside in these residences can grow marijuana for their own personal use.
No plans.
They can grow it anywhere.
Yeah, I guess so.
Okay.
Changing world.
So do I have a motion?
No direct.
Well, basically, actually, do we usually vote when
I don't think we
out?
vote on that. I think usually we
No,
just say
I
it's
think-
no financial
I
impact.
think we just make a general determination that there's no direct financial effect on these articles.
Yep.
if you're comfortable with that, if you're not, we can defer to
Well,
the...
no, I feel consensus here, so I'm fine.
Yep.
Okay. I guess, putting in, no, to make a motion, we find no financial impact. Go ahead.
We never did that.
I'm sorry?
No financial
We never
impact.
voted on that,
Yeah.
yeah, it was always just a statement.
Yeah.
That was my experience.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, well, you should have stopped me at defer. We didn't have to vote on defer then. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, we could have saved so much time. To see if the town will vote to accept the transfer of approximately .79 acre parcel of land, I'm gonna defer. Defer? That's, I want to hear from the Parks Commission on that one.
Yeah.
Article 35, to see if the town will vote to authorize the Board of Selectmen to petition the general court.
That's the
Oh,
charter.
charter.
Oh, the charter, all right. That's no financial impact. And Article 36, I don't believe there's financial impact. Even if something is changed in there, I think that, you know, we don't have letterhead paper, we just make our own as we go. Article 37, the pilot. I think we usually defer.
Yeah.
Agreed. Is that your?
That's my recollection.
All right, Article 38, the zoning. Actually, on all of these last ones, I'm going to say that we should probably defer. We didn't hear from the citizens who are creating the petitions.
Correct.
Yeah.
So, so we will just defer the last of them. All right. So, that being done, that closes, all right. Actually, it doesn't close everything. I will, people were happy with what we used as a format for the warrant report that I had distributed before. Were you gonna write that?
I did say something about that.
You did.
Send me what you did last year or something like that.
Yeah, you did, but if you don't want to, that's fine.
Yeah, that's fine. Whatever, I'm fine
No,
doing.
feel free, go ahead, write it. When does it have to be in? April 8th? I'm sorry?
Oh, no. I can't do that.
I'm sorry, April 8th it has to be in?
Actually, no, next Thursday.
Next Thursday?
In a week?
Yeah, within a week. Okay, so if you want to go ahead, draft it, send it out, and then, actually, I think if there is a notable error, then we'll let you know. I think we typically, I think at this point, I'll just assign you to write it, and then any edits should just be related to the numbers. That, because we're not going to have a chance to discuss and vote on it or anything, so.
I mean, I'll try to get that out by Tuesday.
Well, that would be good, because, yeah, because Thursday it's going into the warrant.
Then maybe I'll have it on Monday.
That would be special, too. I appreciate you doing it. I'm not going to, all right. All right, so that piece of business is done. I had a document, I was just tracking some of the things that we had been talking about through the, over the period. And some of the things that we had talked about having to do with things we were concerned about and wanting to make sure we carried forward in discussion were making sure that we discuss FTEs as part of OPEB discussions. And again, I think we'll talk about that going forward. In the document itself, I think one of the other things that would be good to consider is trends versus surprises and unfunded mandates. I'm going to assume that that's where the stormwater $60,000 came from. It was a surprise and it was a mandate. And it was like, basically, that's one of those things that we kind of have to deal with within the course of the budget that we weren't necessarily anticipating that hits us in different places. I will say the other thing that I was and I don't know if you want to address this in this report, and maybe not. Maybe it's something that we just want to take a look at going forward, is that whole notion of the dependency on funds outside of the town budget. Because we do have several things that it might not be a bad idea to take a close look at, or just to track over time to see what's happening with, clearly the state budget is going to have a significant impact on what's going to be happening with the schools. If the House budget or the Senate budget comes back and actually increases Chapter 70 fund, I don't know if it's possible that they would, but if they do the Promise Act, if we do see more funding, then my assumption is that that would be something that would be accessible to the schools. Is that correct? We would assume that if they up school funding, it'll, that's where it will go. But that's also one of those things that you're just dependent on what's going to happen outside of the town. So that would be another one to think in terms of. And then the other going forward is I really would like to have some discussions around service levels, and I think I'll probably make that recommendation.
I'd also like to add that we ought to have some language about capital, particularly the building, the Vertex building reuse report, and not report per se, but the follow-on costs that attend to maintenance and remediation of these 5 buildings that we've been talking about for a while.
Right.
And the fact that as it is, we have capital and a capital plan of something like capital requirements of something around is it $8 or $10 million? I know it's a fair, it's an eye-opening figure for me at least. So we just because that gets to the balance of operational budgets and capital budgets.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then at some point, and maybe like for the next couple of meetings, the other thing that I want to go back and visit is after hearing on the debt discussion. I know that we can't touch anything until later, but I still would like to revisit, just because I always want to revisit the debt and see whether or not there's a way to reduce that. But given all of the other pressures on the budget, I'm not sure that's going to happen. John?
Could we just open the discussion up? We've got people here. Do they have anything else that they think would be good for us to consider during in our letter?
Well, all of this doesn't have to go into the letter to the town.
Okay, but discuss anyway.
Yeah, discuss anyway, sure.
Phyllis Luck, 50 Sunset Lane. I just wanted to agree with you that I think bringing down the debt, we heard over and over from the people that reported to us on the town's finances, we owe too much money for a town our size. And we really need to focus on driving down that debt, I believe. So I agree with you entirely.
Yeah, I did, the other thing that was clarified for me at the last meeting was that we have limited opportunities to do that because it's all tied up in bonds, and you have to wait until something's redeemable in order to hit it. So given that, I just want to continue that discussion going forward. Any public comment from the public? Oh, we have public comments from the public. You have to have a cookie or you can't comment.
Dave Passios, 56 Whiting Street. I would just like to amend the number that I came up with earlier in regards to the return on investment. Obviously, with $280,000 is divided by 7,000, it's 40 years, not 30.
Yeah.
And I'm sure many people knew that, but we were bouncing numbers around so quickly here that 30 was stuck in my head. The other thing that I'd like to comment on, I was seriously ill with one of the bugs that's been going through the population last Thursday, so I was not able to attend the meeting, and I was really disappointed because I wanted to be here for that presentation on paying down, the possibilities of paying down debt. And I understand that the non-exempt debt, most of it's tied up in bond issues, but his comments really did not address, he said we could save probably $26,000 if we were to pay down, I believe he was talking about $400,000 in debt. But what he didn't address, or what we don't have for a number, is the dollar amount that goes back into the general budget as available recurring revenue if you pay off, and that would be the principal that you're paying off. That $26,000 savings is in interest that you would save if you pay it off early. So the $26,000, the savings, or actually the number you free up to put into the budget to be applied towards other things in your budget over that period, whatever that is. I think it's 3 or 4 years that bond had left in it. It frees up that money. Flip side of that is that if the intent is 4 or 5 years from now, once you pay that bond down, you're going to borrow, you're going to create another bond and borrow again, which I hope we do not do, to keep our borrowing down. Then if you've already allocated that money back into the budget ahead of time, then you've got to pull that from somewhere to start the payments again on a bond.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I hope you don't mind. I wrote some notes because the mic always makes me a little nervous.
Okay.
Sarah Kammer, 304 Lancaster Ave. I bought a house here about 7 years ago, and I haven't really had cause to regret that decision. Of course, I would like, somebody to put sidewalks on my street. It would be great if some stop signs got put on Lancaster Ave so it's not a speedway in the summer, but that's okay. What's not okay is this year my child entered kindergarten. Those of you who think 26 kids in a class is a good idea don't have my experience clearly. The first 2 weeks of school, my child came home with various bumps and bruises, cuts on her face, arms and legs. And this was because there was an overcrowded cubby room. My daughter's cubby was all the way in the back. That's what happens with overcrowding. So I'm really excited to see that there's going to be another teacher for first grade, but it doesn't really end there. That's actually minor in comparison to long-term problems that we're going to experience. What's not minor is that only 55% of our students passed state exams for reading by 3rd grade. Our superintendent wisely suggested a literacy coach to create success for all students to meet their needs. She doesn't have money for it. And I want to point out that this literacy coach, it will not help my child or the kids in her class. It takes several years to change and improve a program. It will help some other child down the road, though, and it really needs to be considered. It is frustrating for me to hear our town manager say our schools are now at a level service budget. I found out today we don't even know what level service is. In my mind, it's equal to the education people had before for education. And that's not what's happening now. The reality, this budget will increase the decline in attainment because we're seeing more ELLs in our primary school. We're seeing an increased population in our primary school. This budget eliminates at the primary school a librarian when we need one more than ever. The other thing I've noticed in our schools is that our teachers are working really hard beyond the level of service. In my students' classroom, they had recently a Dr. Seuss readathon where students were encouraged to read as many books as possible to get to 500. Across the school, I think the number got to around 700. I asked my daughter, how many did kindergarten read? Oh, around 110. Well, I made my daughter read every night, and she got to 20 books. So if you think about the size of our kindergarten classes, the number should be much higher. So of course parents have some role, right? And I think most people take responsibility for that. Maybe people forgot to turn in the form. I don't know, but that's really a discouraging sign to me. And then, coupled with a lack of a literacy coach, reducing the librarian, it's alarming. I asked my daughter what she read in school the other day. She said, oh, from my choice books. They get a best fit book box. She said, I read Berenstain Bears Get a New Baby. And I said, oh, what was the story about? What words did you read? And she said, well, I just looked at the pictures. And I thought, my daughter can read now. But she doesn't realize that's what she's supposed to do with her best choice books. If my teacher, her teacher, had enough time in the classroom to accommodate all of the children she has, she would have gone to my daughter and said, read the words you know already. Of course, I corrected it. But I would say I'm pretty engaged. Now, leave that aside. If you're unconcerned with student achievement, I really beg you to consider your wallet. Our Department of Education, who tracks spending per student by district, shows data up to 2017. Fitchburg, Leominster, Ayer Shirley, Montauk, they all spend more per student. How long is it going to be before our students from Lunenburg school choice out of Lunenburg? In elementary, middle, high, when? Because when they do, we're all going to pay for it. And we're going to pay a lot more, whether we want to or not. School choice funds are rarely negotiable. So I encourage this committee and our town manager and the Board of Selectmen to reconsider what's been allotted to our schools. It's very far from a level budget in my mind. And I see several line items in our current budget to review at town meeting. It is really unfair to deprive our next generations of an outstanding public education. Furthermore, it will bankrupt the town and our students in the long run. So finally, I applaud the desire to create a committee that actually discusses what level service is. I think it's clear I probably have higher standards regarding this than some of the people present today. Thank you.
Any other comment? Okay. George indicated that, I know one of the questions that we were asked to do last week was to appoint someone to work on land acquisition committee. George opted out. If anybody is interested, if not, I'll do it. I mean, my charter review is almost finished, so I can probably do that if nobody else is wanting to do that. I can't commit to that at the moment. Oh God, you can't commit to anything. You have a report to write.
Yep.
I appreciate that. All right, then I'll go ahead and just do that. I think it's supposed to finish up in the fall, probably for a fall town meeting. Is there any other comment from the committee? Our next scheduled meeting is April 11th.
Okay.
It's going to be nice to have a week off.
I understand that.
And then the 25th. So,
25th.
yeah, I know that the school vacation week is the week in the middle of that.
15th, the week
yeah.
of the 15th, yeah.
I think we'll go ahead and have, I was trying to decide if we had anything to meet about, but yes, I think we do.
The week
So
of the 15th?
the week of the 11th, we'll have the 11th meeting.
Oh, yeah.
I was just trying to decide if, I would let you have a break after all of these weeks in a row, but I don't think so. Hannah?
I just have a public comment for when.
Oh, I'm sorry. Sure, go ahead.
Okay, sorry. I just wanted to follow up with my public comment earlier, that if you wanted to buy tickets for Parents' Night Out, to go to lunenburgpto.org, just so you know where to actually get your tickets, and please buy them in advance. Thank you.
All right, well, then I'll accept a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Oh, I'm sorry. Up. I forgot the town manager report. I forgot the town manager report. I'm so sorry.
Wanted to add on to a previous discussion you had about supporting revenues. That was something the Finance Committee discussed at a previous meeting. So I have requested that information from the departments
to
provide all the supporting revenues. Whether it's from friends, organizations, or grants, anything that helps support their department, and we can try to include that in the warrant as well.
Okay.
Okay, that's all.
Okay. Now?
Motion to adjourn.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.